Well, music's causing me some trouble, but whatever, I don't care. I guess we'll just be going silent again. I don't know why YouTube's player's been so weird lately. Alright. Alright, yeah, things are all working over here on my end. So, alright. Alright, let's go take a look at this. I actually don't know if this is the best way to handle this, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. Oh, howdy, Xavier. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hello. There we go. Am I crazy? I'm pretty sure marionette soldiers have cuckoo glintstones, right? So is it possible that this... either someone mistook the soldier dropping it when it was actually the marionette, or... maybe, you know, there was some mistake they did with the loot tables, and somehow... I find that weird. Do you have the silver scarab talisman? I don't think I do. Yeah, no, I only have gold. I think the route I'm taking is also actually slower, because I think having to work my way down these ladders is just not as fast as if I could just run across on Torrent. Right? No, it's not here, though. The puppet should be able to drop it, I would think. Yeah, I would assume the puppet has the cuckoo glintstones, right? So it could just be someone made a mistake and they thought it was the soldier when it was actually one of these guys, you know? But yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a hassle. So we'll just do this ourselves. Let's have some background audio. But yeah, my brain exploded because after we did our talk about, like, you know, Garrus and stuff like that, because like I said, I'm trying to figure out like what the name is for and stuff like that. I'm starting to think that maybe the name Garrus was just chosen out of a hat. Like, maybe it's because of the French film still, but I'm starting to wonder if the name was just chosen so because it starts with a G, you know, similar to Gowry, right? I'm starting to wonder if that was the idea. It's like, oh hey, you know, we have Gowry, so we'll call what do we call him? Garrus, right? So I'm thinking that might be the reason, because overall it's like, oh, he wears the sages thing, and then I looked into it, I was like, oh wait, sages are actually a thing. Like, I never really gave much attention to like the outfit that like Gowry has or whatever, right? And then I'm looking at his dialogue, I'm like, oh yeah, he does kind of call him. He's like, oh yeah, once they called me something like a sage, right? So I was like, oh. And I looked back at the Street Sages and I was like, oh, and that's why it's called Sage Town. I was like, oh, and that makes sense with the location and all that. Yeah, so now I'm like, oh god, like, Garrus is like opening my brain. Still nothing. The worst part is, I don't know if this is like a one-time drop thing. Like, it drops the first time, and then never again. That would suck. I still think the Hex Sorcery is found in Stormvale because Garrus was there since he has Steth as a piece of Godwin. I actually 100% agree with you, Xavier. I came to that same conclusion after, because I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, could it be Capital Outskirts or whatever? But then I was looking at it again, and I was like, no. Especially when we take the Albinaurics into account. I think this is like with the Adon situation, where we were trying to find the elusive, you know, you know, what do they call them? Not cardinal or bishop, whatever, you know, the prelate, right? The elusive prelate, who must have been leading the fire monks all the way down here in search of Adon, right? And we're like, oh, we can find his trail going all the way from Snowfield through Altus, down to Liurnia, all the way across Storm Hill and Limgrave, all the way into Caelid, where they're helping out, right? And then they apparently all left all the way back up to Volcano Manor and Fort Lai, right? And then we finally found our prelate. I think that's the same thing. We have this big, long, convoluted story being told across areas. And it's something like, Garrus starts here. So, Garrus starts here in Sellia. His family dies for whatever reason. He starts getting into the necromancy thing, because we have our good old Deathbird right here, which confirms that, like, he could have observed the Deathbirds or other stuff related to the pagans or whatever, and been able to start, you know, reverse engineering their conjuring magic as sorcery. He gets exiled at Three Sages Ruins, is basically, you know, pursuing his craft. Obviously, can't continue living there because of Radahn and Melania's little tussle, so he leaves. And then he's gonna notice the destruction on the side of Stormvale as he's, you know, passing by. And I think that is what I think he realized there was some connection to death there, or he suspected it. And he basically came up and said, like, hey, I can solve your problem. So he's like, and, you know, Godric's forces, like, they're desperate. They think it's, like, some crazy curse or whatever. So, yeah, if there's some sorcerer expert who claims he can, like, you know, look into it and possibly fix it, sure, okay, we'll let you in or whatever, right? And I think that's, that or he snuck in, right? He snuck in, you know, which, that pretty impressive for Sorcerer Man. Either way, he gets all the way, he finds Godric, and like you said, I think he derives his staff from that. I guess he also gets the skeleton snail snakes at some place. If I had to guess, I think the skeleton snake with the giant skull comes from Gelmir. I think it's from his investigation of Gelmir. It's either that or Capital Outskirts, right? Because that's where we find a bunch of them. But we know from Wyndham that giants are buried on Gelmir. Like, the land does have giants in it. So the idea that he uncovers a giant skull and finds a snail snake, because we know the snail snake's infest Volcano Manor. So the idea that he finds a snail snake, kills it, resurrects it as a thing, and gives it a giant skull for a shell, which he also finds there, that's totally easy to buy, right? Anyway, as I was saying, though, the only question now is the shack. Because I double-checked this before stream. This shack has a corpse there that has no item on it. There's no item on the corpse that is on the front, in front of the front porch of this Revenger shack. So I'm wondering if it's something like Garrus was traveling through here. He was like, hey, since I'm here, I'm going to take a detour, get revenge on the guy who is somehow involved in the death of my family, right? Kills it. Like, you know, guy comes out the door to greet. He's like, oh, hey, Garrus. He's like, boom! You know, kills him. Moves into the place. Because this is, you know, the whole tensions between the Cuckoos and the Albinorks or whatever, Garrus happens to come across some of the Albinork villages and stuff. It's like, hey, you're cut out, you know, the Cuckoos have cut you off from your Carian masters or whatever. You know, this whole thing with Mikkel and the Halig tree is, you know, not getting pilgrimage yet, especially with all the fighting and stuff that you got here. So I'll take some of you if you're willing to work for me and escort you guys out of here and take you far away from all these crazy Cuckoos, right? And that's how we get the Albinorks there with him in the cave. But like I said, now the question is, what about the missing item on that corpse? So I'm trying to wonder, could that be the Cuckoo Glintstone, like I said last stream? If it is, oh no, that's going too high. If it is, then that could be neat. But again, I think, it really depends on whether or not this guy actually has it. And unfortunately, I'm not getting any luck with this stuff. Did you check if the ghost near the Revenger shack that talks about Edgar is there before Edgar's events? He is not there. None of that is there. There is no spirit. There is no, you know, misbegotten corpses. There are no corpses with the rotting meat, which has terrible implications for Edgar. Inside the shack, it is all 100% just that one corpse by itself there. So before Edgar has anything to do with any of this, there's already a dead body that is strangely missing an item. It's like when you come across those areas where, like, you find the chest that's been already opened and looted. It's like, huh, someone's been here and has already looted the item from this corpse. Who could that be, I wonder? Really? Does an item appear there when the guy shows up? That I do not know. As far as I can tell, no, because whenever I've looked at videos and stuff for when Edgar is there, the body's already looted. So before they've even touched any of the bodies in the shack, the other body's already looted. But as I've confirmed in with my other characters and stuff, including those that have never been to the shack, it ain't the player. That item is always missing from that corpse. Even though again, it's your standard it's your standard, noble with the cape corpse that you loot tons of items from all the time. There's no reason for this. God, this is like a 2% drop or some shit. Honestly, the only thing I think I can use to counterbalance this is if this Cuckoo Glintstone is just like some sort of glitch or mistake when they were, putting the marionette enemies here. Now, I don't know how in the hell, because I assume these enemies are placed and they have default loot tables. I don't know how the hell you managed to accidentally give a Cuckoo Glintstone to a Langdell soldier. I don't know, but I guess it's possible. And again, like I said, this is assuming that whoever was writing on the wikis and stuff didn't make a mistake. Also, you're at Langdell in the DLC on this character, but last stream or so you saw Irina still alive. Isn't there supposed to be a flag that kills her and loads Hyetta upon entering Nyrnia? Maybe if you've continued her quest, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think I've even talked to Irina. So, no. Maybe after you kill Morgott? Maybe? I don't know. I have killed Morgott on this character. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the exact trigger is, but she's still alive. So clearly it's not something so simple. Did that change in a I don't know. I cannot tell you, Night Scout. I never really paid attention to any of those types of things. It might have been labeled under a bug fix for all we know, if that was so. If I had to guess, I think you have to at least interact with Irina, because they want to make sure you have the Irina interaction before you have any interaction with Hyetta, so you can notice that they're the same person. Or, they look like they're the same person, I should clarify. We're gonna do this forever. This is gonna be the stream, chat. I hope you really like torture porn. This poor man is being brought back to life over and over just so I can smash him. Smash! The only type of pass or smash I will answer. I'm gonna accidentally pick up like 99 volcano stones by the time we're done with this. Is it possible the soldiers took it from a mannequin soldier? That could be an innocent explanation, but the problem is, Night Scout, is why just the one? It's an incredibly random... It's an incredibly random event either way. If it was all the soldiers in here, or at least the soldiers in this upper area, sure. But apparently it's just this one guy. And like I said, this is assuming that this is accurate and it wasn't a mistake and someone didn't just pick up an item where the marionette and the soldier were overlapping and thought that it was the soldier's item and not the marionette's. That would be my innocent explanation for this. That whoever made that note and stuff just completely misunderstood what was happening. But again, we don't know until we actually... For all I know, I'm gonna, right here, get that drop right now. That's, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. And the Grafted Science is not that weird, all the banished night weapons and stuff, in the larger context of what's going on all across Altus and in Langdell. So, like, again... Like, that's very different from just saying, oh, there's literally this random Langdell soldiers who all have the same copy-paste loot table, except for this one guy. He's got a Cuckoo Glintstone that usually you'd only get from Cuckoo soldiers. Or these marionettes, right? So, assuming that this is true, and there is in fact a Cuckoo Glintstone you can get from this guy, either A, it's one of those first-time drops where you can only get it at, like, at the first, and, like, when you first come to this area. I'm just not going to be able to get it here. B, someone made a horrible mistake. Or C, there's something else going on here. Again, like you said, maybe it was looted from the marionette. I think that is definitely a possibility. It's just one of the idea, I guess, I don't know, like he killed a marionette and now they're like, you know, now they're like shooting him full of arrows for revenge or something. I don't know, could be some reference to some historical event for all we know. If this does exist, you could say it's because it's the only soldier that lives in the puppet era, while the others are madness ones, so that could be the reason. So the idea being that like, this is like his last stand. He managed to fight through all the he fought through all the others, and so he has claimed one of the cuckoo stones or whatever. Yeah, that could work. The idea being that he was the one left behind to continue fending off the marionettes, so he has that cuckoo stone to kind of showcase how he was there still killing marionettes until we got here and see him finally get gunned down. Sure, I could see that. And then you go further up and you see the people who abandoned him all end up getting frenzied or whatever. That, I think, would be a perfectly fair, innocent explanation as well. Long-time viewer, rare-time chatter, been working all evening, listen to Loki, fall and die. Hey, Danny West, sure. There we go. You know it's me. Guys, it's me. It's not my clone. It's not anything. It's actually just Loki. Anyway, hey Danny, welcome to the chat. Happy to see you here. I'm glad to know that you've been lurking for such a long while. It's the only soldier that would have the drop table for a Kukulin, so is what I mean. Yeah, I agree, and that's the thing, is that either A, someone was mistaken, which again, I don't know why. If you're just copy-pasting Langdale soldiers and marionettes, there should be no reason for you to be adjusting the loot tables at all, right? Like, they should already come, like, I assume they don't have to individually do it. That's a lot of unnecessarily busy work, right? God, imagine if every enemy in this game has to be individually placed and have all the loot tables done. And it's like, alright, time for you to put in the same numbers and percentages and items for these guys over and over. What's up, handsome? Hey, Tyrone. He already has his back to the figurative wall attacked by marionettes, too. Yeah, exactly. That's sort of the point, right? The idea would be that, Guy was, I guess, fell behind during the push to get up the mountain and stuff. So it's just him and the Grafted Scion, basically. And obviously Grafted Scion's, like, you know, comes down to fight us or whatever, right? But then we see our guy over here gets cornered, potentially. And he has a Cuckoo Glintstone from one of the marionettes he's killed. But, you know, they finally overwhelmed him, right? Like, this is, like, the hero who did so. Like, I could totally see that scenario playing out. It makes sense to me, for sure. And that would be, I think, be a stronger case than Garrus, or any Garrus connection. But that's, again, the reason why I would want to confirm something like this, because then we can, like, you know, kind of slot that as, you know, mystery solved. Okay, we can move on and think of other stuff. Who upspoken the Madness Plant? It's probably because of the troll. The troll that guards the Volcano Manor here, right? So probably something like troll, you know, climbs over here, is like, I'm gonna rain, you know, madness fire on you. Madness fire, you know, gets in the eyes, and it infects them, blah, 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 you know, right? It's, you know, it's the disease, right? It spreads. And then these guys are now all madnified, you know, madnessified. I don't know how to say that. You know, they're all crazied. They're all frenzied, right? And now that they got all that madness on them, you know, shit sucks. God mad? Madden? No, I like madnessified better. Hey, Sub-Zero, where do you think all the Gilmere Knights went? Did Rykard eat all of them? I can answer that for you. I can answer that for you. Oh no. Oh no, I can't answer that for you. Miyazaki has activated the censorship. 1 second. There you are. Okay. Alright, now I can answer your question. I have been in maddening. I have been in maddening. Oh my god. What the? Okay, that's it. We're doing this. Really? Not even the higher LOD? Wow. Wow. I am insulted. There we go. Here's all the Gelmir Knights for you. Here's all the Gelmir Knights for you. Yeah, they're all, you know, probably the corpses closer to Volcano Manor are more likely to be them, but yeah, one of the spirits is a Rykard guy, from what I recall. Let me go double check here. Both teams played hard out there. Man, it was a tough game, you know, it really went back and forth. They really had us in the first half. Where the hell is this asshole? There you are. Oh, Lord Rykard, if this putrid-filled death is what your blasphemy would bring, then I can no longer abide. No one can. Oh, right. So it's like these are, you know, all the people who have been fighting for, Rykard and stuff. So the Gelmir Knights and all that, they're all among these dead. So yeah. Again, like I said, with this, it could be that this is a one-time thing. It's just like a, you know, because there are some, like, things where, like, you know, things only drop once, or they're set so they drop the first time you kill them or whatever, and that's it. It's the one time only. So it's totally possible that that's what the Cuckoo Glintstone is. They just added an event where, like, he's a guaranteed Cuckoo Glintstone drop, first time, one time only. Just so they can kind of tell that little, you know, vignette with this Last Stand dude. And then, like, you know, then they never have to adjust another loot table again. Does the JP description for the Gelmir Knight armor imply there were some survivors who chose to abandon Rykard? The EN certainly does. I actually recently compiled a Rykard outline, so I can actually pull that up real quick for you and look for it. Oh, why are you on this side? You're not supposed to be over there. That's the game side. Oh, yeah. Also, I think my TV is 120 hertz monitor, but my actual 4K monitor is only 60 hertz. I think I should probably upgrade that so they're more consistent, I think. Rykard content, poggers! Technically, this is all Rykard content. Anyway, Gelmir Knight. Let's see. Helmet of Knights who once served Praetor Rykard. The red feather helm decoration is a symbol of being the child of King Redi. Knight. Gelmir Knight helm. Royal Knight's Result, no. Bloodhound Knight Flow. Ah, here it is, the armor. Chest armor of knights who once served Praetor Rykard. Now a crest no one raises anymore is depicted on it. For when the Supreme King's ambitions fell to base greed, they lost the master they should serve. It doesn't really clarify either way here. Now, it's written in a way that says, you know, now it's a crest that no one raises anymore is depicted on it. So, I guess you could argue they could have just abandoned the armor, but they're still alive. So I wouldn't say that they, I wouldn't say they're necessarily all dead. It could be that they've just, you know, taken off the armor and they no longer wear it. The Serpent Hunter also talks about them, so... weapon which is both a great sword and a spear, said to have hunted an immortal great serpent in the old age, and creates a long blade of light when facing the great snake. For when the Supreme King's ambitions degenerated to base greed, the knights sought a weapon to stop their master. Right, so that seems to be all we really get on the knights. I guess you could argue they may all be dead because, you know, what we see with Spirit Boy, right? Loki Bro, do you ever plan to talk about DS2's McDuff on your website, or just an AA2? McDuff would probably be an AA2 thing. I'll be honest. I don't think McDuff is, like, you know, I don't think, like, the only, like, small side content I might still include, from DS2 is, Pharos. Pharos is the only one where I'm like, you know what, Pharos is, like, you know, notable enough. I'm willing to put that on the website. The rest of that stuff, though, I would probably say, you know what, I'd save that for a hypothetical Abyssal Archive deal. Because I just don't want to, you know, I think it's more trouble than it's worth. I'd rather just write that stuff up, put it in a manuscript, you know, and you know, save that as, like, the special content for you guys who want to buy the book. I already have shots, so I'm good there. So far, this man does not drop anything. Fun fact, the Serpent Hunter has dried blood on it. Ooh. I live for Castanets lore. Yeah. Yeah, we got more lore on what's her face in DLC too. What's she called? Tanith, right? So that's cool. Hey, Pastor. Good to have you. Spirit Guy might have still been alive when he placed the Serpent Hunter. Oh, yeah, sure. But, you know, he's obviously not alive now. Right. And if, you know, he placed the Serpent Hunter there when he was alive, but now he's, dead. You have to make you wonder what killed him. Right? Granted, I think if you get eaten by the snake, you become like the vengeful spirits he summons, right? So I don't know if you can escape the way that guy does, but hey, what do I know? What do I know? I'm not doing the cosmology for this game. Hunty Tanith. I guess his corpse is the one holding it. Oh, that'd be so cool if that's true. That would be so cool. I would love that tremendously. In my opinion, enough Gelmir Knights were alive when Rykard was devoured by the serpent. That for sure, yes. Yeah, the whole Gelmir, Rykard and Gelmir, like the whole, that only falls apart after he gets eaten by the serpent. When it's just him rebelling against the Erdtree and stuff, everyone's on the same page. It's only after he starts feeding himself to the serpent and stuff, and he starts debasing himself to, you know, just eating and, you know, just, you know, kind of like, you know, loses himself to gluttony. That's the only time that, like, you know, his faction starts coming apart. In 10 years, you will, Loki, bro. Of course you're not. Of course you're not, Loki. Oh, God, you guys. You guys. All right. We need the potential lore of sand, Loki. Oh god, the sand lore. Oh my. Honestly, watch me at some point do sand lore for Dark Souls, but yet I still refuse to do any cosmological lore for Elden Ring. Would Rykard technically be strongest demigod? Bro needs some primordial weapon to be killed at this point. I mean, keep in mind that the term strongest demigod is specifically used in terms of, like, the strongest demigod in the Shattering. And I know that Morgott and Rykard seem to have never stopped fighting. But, you know, allegedly, you know, supposedly, the Shattering ended with Malenia and Radahn's battle. That was the last battle of the Shattering War. Now things are just shattered. It's no longer shattering. We went from shattering to shattered. But yeah, so like, yeah. And honestly, Radahn seems to just be called the strongest demigod in the Shattering because he went toe-to-toe with both Morgott and Malenia. Like, obviously, he managed to break the walls. He's the second person in the entire history of Leyndell to have broken down its walls, done any significant, you know, damage to it, right? I feel like something should have dropped by now. Or maybe not. Holding the stars back all the while, yeah, exactly, right? Like, when you take all of that into consideration, it's like, yeah, it makes sense why they call him the strongest in the Shattering. Even though Malenia is technically the undefeated. And technically, Radahn is the defeated. Like, he has lost all the 2 battles he took part in. Now, granted, heavily preface that, the first one was mostly Godrick's loss. Yeah, I would agree. He's probably, again, by any metric, I would say it's fair to call Radahn that. Whether or not you want to, again, like I said, I don't like, you know, power scaling. Talking about, oh, could this character beat this character, or whatever, right? Like, again, it's always going to be up to the storyline. But I think it is a fair assessment based on everything we know. Ah, wow. I got all that stuff, and you don't drop me anything? Pathetic. Well. Back to being my Sisyphus. Battles are super contextual. They weren't 1v vying and dive kick. Yeah. again, it's why I don't like doing this stuff on, like, you know, within games or even, you know, across different franchises, because there's so much that you have to consider or whatever, and honestly, like I said, it ultimately just comes down to, if there's a writer who says X beats Y, then you know what, even if you think it's all stupid, well, X beat Y. So I just don't like to get into that type of stuff. If Radahn is called the strongest in the Shattering, you know, I'm gonna take their word for it, and from everything I see, it seems fair enough. Yeah, you got a Cuckoo Glintstone, that's for sure. So this guy's got Cuckoo Glintstone for days. Might be odd, but does he drop anything if the Marionette soldiers kill him instead? I guess we can find that out, can't we? Let's try that. Maybe it requires the Marionette soldiers to kill him for this event. Like I said, I don't know if this is like a one-time thing, like it's the first time you come across these guys. But we'll see. I'm gonna laugh even if it's just coincidence that this guy starts dropping stuff when we activate AI here. The best comparison of what people speculate on referring to power in these kinds of discussions reduced to agency, which is the ability to control future states. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's a technical way of putting it. The simple answer is always that, like, there's a million different circumstances, and it always depends on what does the character know, what's the battlefield, what are they able to do, like, how does their skill set translate into another medium, because you could have a character who has a lot of skills talked about or shown, or, you know, described in a book, but then you have, like, say, something like Radahn, which is something you could express and see in the video game, but that's constrained by video game and game mechanic limitations and stuff like that, so, like, how accurate is that and all that? Nope, he didn't drop anything, so... Cuckoo Glintstone from this guy. Alright, so... Let's try a different approach. Let's go to a character who I have not actually gone up here to Gelmir with. Yeah, this is one of the characters I did the quick test case on. I think Shishinki? But for real, Mesmer gotta be the strongest at base or as strong as Radahn since he's on equal footing with his younger siblings with no Great Rune. I don't know how much the Great Rune contributes to their powers, if I'm being completely honest, right? In terms of, like, their fighting strength and stuff. I legit have no idea. As far as Mesmer's concerned, though, I mean, Mesmer, he looks like a twink. But we have to keep in mind, he's still a demigod who's born and fighting. He's still stuck in the age of Godfrey, essentially, right? So I have to imagine, at the very least, that, you know, he's got that, like, you know, be strong, heroic mindset, you know, fight, you know, rah, fight the dragons type thing going for him. Oh, I've been up here before. Oh, so I might have seen this already, but I guess we'll see. Loki, on stream, which FromSoft game do you have the longest hours on? If I had to guess, it's probably Elden Ring, maybe Dark Souls 3 or 1. The problem is that I've had different setups. I've uninstalled and I've uninstalled and reinstalled games before and lost data and stuff in the process. So, like, it could be that if you tally up all my Dark Souls 3 hours, it would. But, like, with Elden Ring, I don't know. Because Elden Ring, I think the hours accelerate on ×5 speed. So I might have 5 times more hours than I actually, you know, should have. Alright. He dropped it. Ow. No! No! I wasn't quite. I should have paused after. I should have paused. No! He dropped something. We confirmed he dropped something. I mean playtime on Steam, not stream. That I do not know either. Let's see. Which one is the longest according to Steam? Like I said, I think I probably have lost some of those hours or stuff, or at least I don't think the Steam would record it all. But let's see. 963 hours on Dark Souls 3, 218.6 hours on Dark Souls 2, 362.4 hours in Dark Souls. Steve says I've only played 82 minutes on Elden Ring because I use a different boot up one, so I don't often use the official Elden Ring startup. Whoops. So I guess it's Dark Souls 3 if I had, yeah. Dark Souls 3 would probably be the winner. Wow, some lore expert. Only 82 minutes in Elden Ring, man, chat. Me thinking I could talk about Elden Ring lore after playing it for only over an hour. I've got 2K. Congrats, Xavier. Let's see. It gets better in the 83rd minute! Alright, please. Please, tell me. Tell me you'll do this again. Please. Alright. I turned it back on right after, so we should be good. That was Smithing Stone 4. That wasn't Cuckoo. That wasn't Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Again, I'm gonna laugh if it was actually the first time, but because I died, we lost that chance. Ah! I was trying to look at chat for a second, and I almost got myself killed. Classic me. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Alright. Alright, let's look at this. Sirs? Sirs, sirs? I think he's dead. Good sirs? I think you got him. Listen, this isn't the Impaler here. We don't need to be, like, crucifying this man. It has the Caped Nobles, like I mentioned earlier in the stream, Night Scout, so... It's the Cape Noble model for Revenger Shack. Here. Just to show off. Pauses when they kill me and are still attacking. I know, I hate it. Here we go. Literally, opens the door, walks out to his front porch, bleh! Gets murdered. There's not any of these bodies here. There's no misbegotten bodies strewn about the general area here. No spirit, which is gonna be warning us about poor old Edgar. To be fair, his front door's fairly exposed there. I assume it wasn't, you know, when he was still living in it proper. Renovations recommended. What if the guy really... I mean, don't you love that wonderful Liurnia rain? You want to just, you know, open the entire wall so you can hear it outside? Wait, if he was living there for it to be his front door, wouldn't that make him the titular Revenger? Not necessarily, because the assumption would be that whoever was the owner here would get killed and then the Revenger moved in, much like Edgar does, right? I mean, you could probably make an argument maybe that this guy's a Revenger, but then the question would be, where the hell is the item then? Again, the problem is that ultimately when you start a new character and you do absolutely zero things involving Edgar and Irina and crap, you have this guy here with zero item. And this guy still has zero item even when Edgar does come here and you have all the other bodies and stuff there, so... That's why I'm saying maybe the idea is Garrus, and it's like something like, Garrus, again, like we were talking about earlier in the stream, you know, Garrus does his travel, does his whole thing at Stormvale, keeps moving, is like, oh, you know what, there's that asshole who probably got my family killed or something like that, right? Like, and then comes in, kills him, And then moves into the shack, and then it's like, oh, hey, Albinorix down here. Yeah, I see you got this big problem with, like, the cuckoos and stuff up there. You can't really get to the Carians or whatever. I mean, that's cool or whatever. How about some of you come with me, and I'll go escort you out of this crazy place and take you somewhere. Because I have research and stuff. Just gotta help me out with my little experiments and stuff. And thus we have Sage's caveman with his Albinorix servants guys over there. Right. So the Revenger Shack could facilitate an explanation on how that played out with the Albinorix. But again, the problem is, well, if that's the case, a good way to indicate that would be give us an item connected to Garrus that could go back there. And like I said, maybe that item could have been the Cuckoo Glintstone, but as we just went over, you know, what was it, 10 minutes ago? Whatever it was? You know, there's an alternate scenario where, you know, this is just Last Stand Soldier. He's been killing marionettes, picking up their Cuckoo Glintstone, you know, taking anything they have on hand off of him so he can try to survive, and then we finally get there, and, you know, he has his heroic last stand where he gets, you know, murderized by arrows. You know, wasn't that how Leonidas went in 300? I can't remember. Wasn't he, like, you know, also kind of similarly, like, you know, Last Stand, you know, shot down with a bunch of arrows or something? It's been so long since I saw that film. Do you think guys having red blood is an oversight or intentional, since even Loretta has red blood, though she may not have been one in Albinorix, I mean? My position is currently that, Gaius is an Albinorix, because he's explicitly said it's called such. Loretta is not. It's just a silly, quote-unquote, silly rumor, an absurd rumor, because Loretta, emulates the Albinorix women specifically so much. You know, constantly riding her horse, fighting with a sorcery bow magic instead of, you know, typical, you know, glintstone sorcery and stuff like that. Like, basically she was heavily inspired by those archers, and she basically modeled a lot of her fighting style and stuff. It became such a thing where she fights so much like those Albinorix women on their wolf backs that a silly rumor started that, you know, she actually is secretly an Albinorix. That's where my position is. I don't think she actually is an Albinorix. I just think she owes a lot to Albinorix, and that makes her a filthy, stinking silver hugger, which is why she helps lead them to safety and paradise under the Halig Tree, and starts, you know, abandoning Caria for the Halig Tree. Because ultimately she feels she owes them more than she owes loyalty to Caria. Guy says no blood, and the red blood comes from the boar. I guess you can make that argument, but the problem is that like, ultimately, even though it's possible for them to make it where, like, you know, they consider, like, you know, Gaius and his boar separate, they didn't. So both of them end up bleeding red, apparently, when you hit them, as Zuli demonstrated in her vid. So it is what it is. I'm definitely not making that argument. Okay, you're being sarcastic. I thought of something. Do the Greyside Albinorix at Ordina have holy resistance? I would assume yes, but I don't know. That I do not know. Cool in-game rumor. Yeah, right? Like, it's one of those things where I get why people... And again, here's the thing. After what happened with Gaius, I don't blame people who still want to advocate that she actually is one. But me looking at it, like, just at, like, all the lore and how it's laid out and everything, I just don't think she is. I don't think there's the big secret where Loretta is, you know, this unknown, you know, Albinorix and height. Like, none of it really makes sense to me, right? It all just works if the idea is that she's just a she's just a Carian knight who really got, like, fascinated with, like, you know, the Albinorix that are being created in Caria. This is she is intended to help kind of facilitate showing how there were, you know, Albinorix in Caria being made, I mean, right? Which are the women, and that because of her being, like, up close and personal seeing that, she was heavily influenced by them. Okay, there we go. Enough of me screwing around, walking around like an idiot. Okay. Let's try another character who has probably never been to that part of Gelmir yet and receive that item. This time, we're not going to get myself killed on the first hit. Back at Revenger Shack. This is the kill Morgott character. Whenever we want to get shots of Morgott in Phase 2 and stuff, we're gonna be using our buddy here. Soporific Grease, that's Miquella connected, right? Scavenger's Curse. I remember reading something about that. Soporific Grease. The materials. I can't even craft. I do not remember. The scavenger thing I remember we talked about before. I do not remember ever going over what we did with the with the soporific thing. Think guys chose to follow Mesmer, they best buds. Well, yeah, he definitely chose and stuff, right? As I talked about before in my Gaius article, I think it's more along the lines of Radahn wanted to know kind of, you know, as a general and stuff. Radahn is privy to information about the war efforts, right, that are going on. So he learns about the Crusade. He's kind of curious about the Crusade, so he sends some of his people in there to kind of tell him about this entire other land, which again, for the entirety of Radahn's life has not existed, right? Like, that's something we kind of have to keep in mind. He's like, Radahn is born after the Realm of Shadow becomes the Realm of Shadow, right? Like, after all that a huge chunk of the lands between is sent there, right? So, he goes in there, Gaius is sent with him, and he's like, you know what, guys, if you find, like, a happy life, working or doing stuff with Mesmer and things instead, all the better. I'm happy for you. Alright, so hopefully this character is among those. Nope, no item. Yeah, I have no idea if this guy actually is Cuckoo Glintstone or not. No, Bray, you still in the chat? No, Bray, where are you? I need you to like go into Elden Ring's files and confirm this for us, because I'm feeling so perplexed. We cannot get this guy to drop the Glintstone if it actually exists. I swear, if it really was just a mistake and someone just thought a marionette drop was a Langdale soldier drop, I'm here, little bro. There you are. There's my no Bray. There's my Aniki. I love classic knight build. My favorite build is just a knight with spear, sword, and shield, and swap between throwing spear and sword combat. Yeah, I can see the appeal with the melee stuff. Scavenger's Curse was used to cut Trina Worshipper. It has a woman on its pommel that I can't recall if she's pregnant or has a baby. Oh, you think that's the... that the Scavengers actually are all Trina people? Oh, it does have the woman thing. Huh. Interesting. I have a request too. Do perfumers additionally have 0% holy resistance, or is it possibly a typo? I would not be surprised if they do. Right? Like, that's not too crazy to me, because, they're priests, they're not necessarily, like, divine beings. But we'll take it for what it is. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to look closer now at that weapon and stuff, then. Let's do that. Yeah, I don't care. There we go. Huh. A lot of rust and blood. What a shocker. Damn. Doing this with times high speed may not be the ideal. Oh! Might not be ideal. Yep, that's a woman with a baby. That is most definitely a woman with holding a baby. Cloaked woman. Turn off blood in options. Weapon model slows blood. 0 out of 10 unplayable. That is funny when you think about it. I did not consider that. Take off the armor? Oh yeah, that could work. But we got the shot. This kind of reminds me of the Omen weapons, you know? I don't know, something about it kind of gives it that feel. I think it's the curve. Alright, so... And before it's the Catacomb Sorcerer from the DLC with the dead baby. Oh my god. I can check the 1.0 description, see if there's any difference with those, with this, sword or something. If there was any, like, additional lore. It could also just be, like, you know... It could also just be, like, you know, an added detail, and it's, like, you know, it's not relevant, of course, but, you know, it's something that I'm glad to have pointed out to me, to keep in mind. Bloodborne changes him, man. We talked about missed opportunities a lot, but if you had to pick one thing you wish they would have done out of all the things we talked about, what would it be? I would have liked it if we still had Miquella as part of the Halig tree and fighting alongside Malenia like they originally had the idea for. I'll be honest, I find the again, let's assume that even if it was like the whole Miquella wanted Radahn to be his Elden Lord in the future or whatever. Let's assume that was something Martin had always had written out and that was always a plot thread that could be explored by Miyazaki. That doesn't mean I think that the subplot we got with the DLC is any good. It's actually kind of cringe. I would much prefer if they stuck with the original idea they had in cut content with Miquella being part of the Halig tree and helping with his abundance stuff with Malenia or whatever, and we could have that duality between, you know, abundance and rot and all that jazz. I think I would have preferred that a lot more, and just let Radahn die. Like, I'm even okay with the whole idea of having it be where, like, Malenia was specifically sent out there for Radahn to be brought back, you know, as, like, you know, Miquella's lord and stuff like that. Like, I'm okay with all of that jazz and everything like that. It's just the actual subplot we get in the game where I'm just like, you know what, I think I would have preferred if Mohg never kidnapped Miquella. Now, I think the subplot with all the characters in the DLC is peak. Radahn is mid, though. Well, again, I'm talking about the subplot in terms of, in the case of the larger narrative, this subplot where we chase down Miquella and go after, you know, finding the whole thing with him resurrecting Radahn and becoming God and all that. I think it's all very lame. Like, it's the one thing with the DLC where I think the entire thing leading up to the final boss is just a very lame, kind of cringe story. I think it's reflected in how the DLC really does not leave as much of an impact as you think it should for a game that, like, literally sold, like, 20 million or whatever, right? Like, it's one of those things where I really think it, I think they really screwed the pooch there, right? So that'd be the one thing where I'm like, you know what? I wish they didn't miss that opportunity to have the Miquella Malenia tag team. In terms of, like, you know, the subplots with the other characters within the whole Miquella Radahn subplot, I agree. Those, I think, are, for the most part, very good. I have very little to complain about on that, in that regard. Hot take, I never cared enough about Radahn or Miquella. I mean, that's a loaded question, because it's like, what do you mean by cared? Right? Do you mean, like, emotionally invested? I mean, I'm not emotionally invested, really, in any of these demigods, like, right? Like, it's like, they're antagonists for you to kill, you know, for all intents and purposes, right? I guess you could argue, am I interested in, like, their characters or where they're going? Like, I was happy with where Radahn's story ended. Like, I don't think he's, like my favorite demigod, right? He's not Godric, but, like, I think there's a cool, neat, interesting, like, character and story arc told there. Miquella, I don't know, because I was purposefully avoiding analyzing Miquella in anticipation of the DLC finishing his stuff up. But now that the DLC's finishing stuff up, I'm kind of like, what's the point? What's the point? He just Dark Souls 2'd it! I'm sure you could make thematic arguments for it, Sub-Zero. I just think, again, just as from a pure plot and story perspective, I think it's just incredibly lame. I think when it comes to all the stuff I like about the DLC story and world building and plot and stuff, none of it involves Miquella. Maybe Letta, because like I said, Letta got a laugh out of me. I like her just because of that one fucking, you know, gag they did with her. Like, huh, I think I'm actually just crazy. I might just be unhinged. I appreciated that. It's stupid and I cried for 40 minutes because I'm so awful. Okay, now that's alright, let's go overboard. No, don't need to cry over this, but yeah, it's one of those moments where you know, cue the meme of the anime girl sitting in the film, you know, her eyes crying as she's watching the movie and she's going, this shit is so ass. That's me, that was me by the end of that. I don't know if it's even that the writing need more elaboration. I just think, again, I just think it was a bad. I think the whole, I think it just I think one of my major problems with how the thread does is, one is I feel it unnecessarily like kind of brings back Radahn as like a villain or whatever, and it works. It would have worked if this was not DLC, if this was still part of the base game, because then it's kind of like a God of War situation where it's like, okay, they're reusing assets, right? But, you know, it's for this, like, little, like, miniature side plot or whatever, and it's part of the main story or what have you, right? Like, I could have lived with it then, right? With what we got instead, it just feels like it reduces a lot in Miquella's character, at the forefront to Simperism. Obviously, there's a lot more lore and context and background and backstory and a lot more going into it or whatever, right? But at its core premise, it's basically just like, ooh, poor little Miquella. He took a childhood promise that was made in jest by poor big, brave, strong Radahn, seriously. And now he's trying to live out his shoujo manga fantasy. And it's making everyone suffer. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. Yeah, it's like, yeah, when you think about it for a second, this is kind of just dumb. And like I said, all the stuff that I personally found interesting and cool to learn about in the DLC were stuff about Mesmer, stuff about Marika, stuff about Rao, stuff about the dragons. Basically anything other than what was going on with Miquella's the main storyline of the DLC with Miquella. Raw Civilization got pushed to the side for Miquella's Yandere romance supply. Yeah, I guess, yeah. I feel like I got robbed of my money. Yeah. Again, I do think the DLC, I don't think it, like, ruined the DLC for anybody. I think there's too much good in the DLC for people. But I think the fact that the DLC feels like you're just walking or you're exploring a lot, not finding a lot of stuff compared to the base game, right? The fact that it's just less dense with items, which again, I think was just scope creep. I think, like I said, I think they ended up, because of how long it was taking them to make the DLC, I think they just ended up planning to make the map so much bigger than they originally had in mind, and it just ended up becoming this, like, monstrosity that they didn't have enough items with, like, you know, lore and stuff to justify it, right? So I think that ended up happening. You know, just my 2 cents there. But yeah, I think that in the exploration, and then the payoff with the actual main plot with Miquella, and just you fighting Radahn again, especially like pre-patch, how absolutely horrible that boss is. I think that really soured a lot of people on the DLC and really like hampered the generally positive reception it has received. Trina is dead is just into Miquella and that's it. Yeah. Like, all the people who are, like, thinking about, ooh, optional Trina boss, like, Miquella transforming to Trina Phase 2, like, as I said before, I think any idea that for a plot premise people have come up with for how you could have, like, something to build your story around is, like, we want to have this be our final boss, would have been cooler than just, oh, yeah, it's Radahn Reborn. Oh, and then, like, we have, like, you know, Lothric and Lori and Twin Princes, you know, Electric Boogaloo. Literally the worst thing, yeah. What the fuzz? Karo's hidden grave? Like, who the hell is this guy? I don't know, maybe some random dude that's buried there. Maybe he's the founder of the graveyard. Maybe he's the first person to ever been buried at the graveyard. Who knows, son? Oh. Who's the livingness? Who's Carolus or whatever, however you pronounce those names. That made a lot more sense in the 1.0 version. Then it's like, I know, they were founded by Azure and Lusat. It's like, then why the hell are they not named the Azure and Lusat schools? Likely the Tibia Mariner. You think it's like the first Tibia Mariner? No, I am convinced the Tibia Mariner is actually just named Tibia. Yeah, it's obvious that Karo's a reference to Charon. Like, it's very obvious that's what the reference they're going for. Right? Now, does that mean that he's a Tibia Mariner? I don't know. It could just be because, you know, you have the Tibia Mariners and the whole, you know, escorting the dead to the next life and all that stuff with in Elden Ring, that they could just be making the reference. Either way, I find it funny. Okay, so... let's go back here. Nothing here at Gelmir that's really sticking out. I remember back in Discord, the discourse, it was deciding whether the leaked footage was real or not. It's one of those things where it is so silly. It's so absolutely absurd, like, when you tell someone that, it's like, oh yeah, the DLC, the final boss fight's gonna be a rehash of the Radahn fight, but Miquella's gonna be hanging off of his shoulder. It's gonna be like Twin Princes. Like, that sounds like some, like, bullshit fake leak. Like, if you told me it, I would not have believed it was real. Oh, whoops. I just straight up wouldn't have believed you. Right, Space. So you have this idea of Trina worshippers, killing and robbing, Erdtree missionary, hiding out here. They are being pursued by Morgoth's forces. So you got the, got the BK and the Lingdell forces and stuff coming with an executioner to mete out punishment to these criminals. They don't find the criminals because they're hidden behind the illusory wall, so they kind of just pass them by, set up their own camping, like I guess we missed them, right? I guess we just missed them. Has Lusky ever compiled all the Elden Ring design road tiles? Looking at some of myself, they don't seem like more consistent regarding, the most consistent regarding carving versus painting. I think it's, at least from what I've seen, it looks a lot like texture work to me. Then we got, we're starting to get, some of the items with, like, the golden great arrows and the dragon wound grease for the knights and stuff of the ancient dragon cult. Then you got, getting closer, oh, no! Getting closer to Garrus, then we have the, Ravenmount stuff, because, Mount Gelmir was Ravenmount, so then... I was like, I know I've uncovered this area. Loki stream. Yep, it's a Loki stream. There we go. So then we get here, so he, this was, he was just doing his own business, collecting relics of, like, Ravenmount assassins and stuff, trying to understand more about the history and magic of the old death pagans on Ravenmount, Crow Mountain / Mount Gel, now it's Gelmir Mountain, right? I'm gonna, oh my god, I'm gonna laugh if it turns out that Gelmir, or Gelmia, as the JP kind of more words it, turns out to be some weird, fancy way of saying crow, or raven, or something. Like, I swear, if that turns out where the inspiration for the name comes from, that's gonna, like... oh my god. Anyway, point is... there we go. Yeah, this one looks more natural, right? There we go. If I recall correct, the etymology side of the fandom soars Gelmir to a place where waters bubble up in the North's underworld. Maybe that could work. Maybe. I know the name is consistent with Tolkien stuff, but I don't know enough about Tolkien to say if there's any connection there. All I've seen is that Gelmir is apparently the name of a gnome of the, like the king of the gnomes or something like that. Or something to that effect. No, this one looks similar to what we got. No, this looks similar. Yeah, this looks like they might have just copy-pasted it. This one's just they made smaller. Yep. Like I said, the fact that we have the corpse pile here, that's such a cool little detail I was not expecting. Alright, we got the shots though with the with our assassin friend in there, so. The Miquella plotline would be okay for me if it didn't actively and obviously take away from the other DLC plotlines. Just kind of mid and not actively bad for me. It just takes away from others. Yeah, I agree. I think the opportunity cost is what makes it so egregious, I think, for a lot of people. It's just like, we waited so long, and this is the storyline that we're going with, right? And again, like I say, I disagree from the lore side, but I get why people would have preferred if we just had a resurrected Godwyn fight or whatever, right? Like, I've said it before, if Godwyn was going to be in the DLC, it was going to be like a Godfrey style, like, Golden Illusion thing. You could have, like, Siraj fighting alongside him or whatever, so you get to see a Siraj in action. That would have been so much cooler than what we got. Like I said, literally anything would have been better than what we got. As far as, bosses or things we could have encountered or focused on for the plotline. Again, I think the fact that they completely ejected the whole Miquella Dream World, like, all the Hailing Tree stuff, again, I think that's kind of, I'm not intrinsically opposed to it, but I'm kind of sad given what we did get. It's like, wow, it would have been really cool for us to kind of see Miquella's Dream Worlds and stuff like that. But obviously, that wouldn't allow them to tie in all the Messmer lore into the DLC then. Because then we wouldn't be able to get to see Messmer and all the stuff involving them, right? That's why I said, like, I think, like, there's a huge scope creep and stuff like that. Anything, even Miquella's consort being... Okay, anything, obviously, within the context of the story and lore of, you know, the canon of Elden Ring. Not within whatever random-ass, you know, like, crack theory you can come up with multiverse of madness bullshit. Though, yes, I think Gwyn would appreciate Miquella as his new wife. Clearly, the two of them both love manipulating people so well. Alright. Well, everybody, like I said, the only thing I really wanted to figure out was the Cuckoo Glintstone. It's not dropping for us normally. I would much prefer if we have Nobre here, you know, look into the game files to check it all out for us when he gets the chance. And yeah. I wonder if Sero screwed them over due to Miquella being a kid. I don't know, because there are plenty of ways around it, especially if it's a boss fight. Like, just turn Miquella to some vaguely monstrous entity or something like that, and you could get around those types of restrictions. I mean, developers, especially in horror titles and stuff, have done it all the time. Just look at Dead Space 2 and, you know, how they beat up children. That was a huge selling point of the thing, and they made sure to visually distinguish it so that way the game wouldn't go above a M rating. Question regarding the Beastman's jar shield. This isn't saying about expressly making shields from clay, right? No, it's an earthen jar. It's an earthen jar. Now, I don't... Clay, I guess that gets into, like, you know, what is... what do you mean by clay, right? Again, it's definitely an earthen jar, though. It is they're very much specifying that. So it's earthenware. It's made of soil and dirt and all that jazz. To clarify, JP text doesn't say or imply that the Beastmen only make shields from jars, right? It does, okay, it does use the term, in fairness, it does use the term that you'll see me translate as choice weapon. You know, it's kind of like, you know, your specialty, you know, the thing that you do so right. But that, again, it's kind of a fluff word. It basically just means, oh, this is the weapon that you should chiefly associate with this enemy, right? So in this case, the Beastmen of Farum Azula, because we see them wield it, right? You know, kind of self-evident. Yeah, obviously, it's their weapon of choice. They're using it. They're wielding it against me in battle. So, again, like, to be fair, it is saying that that is, like, again, like, you know, kind of like, you know, like, this is their thing, right? But no, it does not say that they necessarily exclusively use those shields. And if you recall, we see Beastmen skeletons which use the Sun Capital shield. So obviously they have no problem necessarily using metal shields. It's just that all the Beastmen we fight, for the purposes of the storytelling, only will be one, the only Beastmen we'll encounter with shields alive will be the ones with these earthen pot shields. I found all the lore I could on the Gnome King. There's literally no more than that so far anyway. He doesn't seem to have done much, so I think they just liked his name. Maybe. It could be, again, it could be in a reference, it could not be a Tolkien reference. It could be something else entirely that we're not picking up on, right? Maybe the etymologists are right, and it connects back to the history of the place. If it's if this was Crow Mountain, it was connected to, like, the mother of the Deathbirds and all that jazz, right? Maybe. Like a willing to use case or a total desperation and going insane case? Like totally willing to, like, there is no, okay, to put it this way, there's nothing in the text that would make me believe that this is some oddity for them. This is, and the description makes it very clear that this is just cultural. It's a weird thing, but this is just, you know, this is part of their, this is just how the Beastmen do. He takes an earthenware pot, you know, bakes it, hardens it, and breaks it so that way it can be a shield. It's not, oh, these are just, you know, random mad beastmen, picking up any random thing. The text is very clearly trying to talk about how this is a cultural practice. Like, this is some custom that the beastmen have. And you don't necessarily, now, any ordinary outsider isn't going to comprehend the reasons and purpose and ideas of that custom, but that is the custom. And as I said before, it's likely because, again, it's not just Earth, we can also see the little gold specks in it. It's consistent with this idea of return to dragon, right? And it's like, okay, when you die, we're gonna bury you in rock, we're gonna embed you in the rock, and, you know, bury you with some gold and stuff, so you can return to our great ancestors, the ancient dragons who gave birth to all animal life, or something like that. As I've said before, that is where my position on that stands. I think it'll take a while for me to give you the stuff you need, Loki and Night Scout, for it's taking a real long while for my unpacker to unpack Yara's files. That's fine, no break. I'm not in a rush. As you guys can see here, I'm just kind of jumping around while talking to chat at this point. Notice the Claimant Sorcery is the same sigil as the Nox Night Sorcery sigil. Yeah, again, that makes sense to me, especially if we're going with the idea that the Nox, especially in Nokron, assimilated some of the ancient dynasty folk into their civilization later. Because it could be that the priests actually outlived everyone else in the ancient dynasty when it collapsed and stuff like that. Because there's no statement actually that the Claymen necessarily you know, how do I put this? There's no statement to the effect of that they are you know, that they became what they became, you know, made of all that mud and crap at the destruction of their civilization. It could have been something that happened later. Don't know if that's true, but could have been at least. I began into the song on Ice and Fire for the first time, but hesitant because I don't like Martin's view on history and morals, and so far it's exactly what I thought. Still well written. Yeah, I think you can still definitely respect an author, even if you don't maybe agree with him philosophically or stuff, right? He can still tell a good story, right? Also, I think what's important for a writer is that the story has to stay true, stays true to itself, right? I think that's something where it will naturally Obviously, you know, with some, you know, talent, technique, and skill, and you know, revisions, definitely revisions. But you can definitely come up with something that's really, truly, you know, speaks to the soul. I mean, let's see. At least the one good thing they did with the Radahn Miquella plot is remove Radahnn's cheeky and cringy monologue in his first cutscene in the game. Oh my god, yes. If I had to hear another freaking demigod give me a whole spiel of introducing themselves before... Like, I get it. I get it. You all... I get it in the context of like, a lot of these demigods, like Morgott, or like, I get it. You are technically Godfrey's kid. You just have the, I got a monologue before the fight built into you. It's the barbarian culture. Which, by the way, I find that so hilarious. That literally, that Godfrey doing the stupid-ass roar thing before he introduces himself into the middle of the fight is just some canon cultural event of his people. It's like, really? That's how you want to signal his people? That they are freaking, like, Chewies. Ah! Yeah, Radahn, cause, yeah, I still don't know where I land with Radahn, and, like, is he truly forced? Is he, like, is he just like, well, you know what, I'm already dead, may as well, right? The thing with Radahn for me is, I don't know, like, considering how big, like, his horse and stuff are for him, I honestly don't know if Radahn would willingly not have Leonard with him for that final battle, if this was all, like, per his will. Like, maybe there's nothing he could do about it, right? But, like, I don't know. I feel like with how big they make a deal about him and keeping his horse with him and how much his horse means to him and stuff, I guess honestly, it's not really that the horse means as much to him, it's what the horse represents, because it represents him, and, like, you know, weak little Radahn becoming big, strong man and stuff, and he, you know, he needs Leonard to be there with him, right? Because otherwise it'll, you know, psychologically inform him that he has no hope of meeting those giants of his past either, right? Isn't there some Japanese practice of declaring oneself boldly before trying to claim someone's head for emergency path? I do not know. I am not familiar with this, so I do not know. But it's one of those things you always see in an anime and manga, right? You know, before the big thing, the character has the big dramatic introduction where they talk about them, you know, they're monologuing and stuff like that, and you're like, wow, why doesn't someone just shoot you while you do that, right? It's just one of those things, you know? Miquella promised the horses the DLC later! What are your thoughts on the Newman? What do you mean by the Newman, Bernie Sanders? Like, I've said it before. I believe Newman are space aliens. They come from the stars. They, like the other stuff we have here, have the human form. One of them became the first Elden Ring god for Placky. Placky and her and the other Newman and the dragons, you know, they got the giggity on. They produced dragon people, you know, the Draconians as they're called. Those Draconians would continue to proliferate and become the modern humans we see all across the world. When you get those humans breeding with the Beastmen, you get demi-humans. I believe that these were considered abominations even by Farum Azula standards, and they all got thrown out and they became their own tribes and stuff, but they still maintain some memory of their past. So you have, like, the matriarchal queen system and stuff like that, right? I've said that I've just assumed Miquella revived him as he knew him when he was younger. I think it would have to be the complete soul. I don't think you can... maybe you could argue that he, like, sealed memories or something, so he mentally resets him or whatever, but I don't know, even then. I get the feeling it's more like physically he's made his younger self, while mentally, he's you know, he's the full General Radahn with all his, you know, battlefield experience and memories and stuff. They got the giggity, bro really became Quagmire for a second. Giggity. They were boinkin'. They were, in fact, boinkin'. Probably not the complete soul. The tarnishes Radahn's remembrance. See, my question is are remembrances, like, actually the souls of the bosses that we... I mean, I guess they would have to be, right? Because we can use the soulless demigod bullshit to bring them back, right? Kind of like what the mausoleums are trying to do. But, like, I don't know if it's an actual soul or if it's, like, a copy, you know? Like, it's a USB drive, you know? Hey, like, the Erdtree really quickly copied the soul down and encoded it for you real quick. So I don't know if it's actually, like, you know... If you could actually say it's not the full soul versus what we get is, like, you know, a copy of the soul, if that makes sense, right? The point of the game is that matriarchies are terrible. That's the only message I got. Oh no. Think about it. Godfrey had America in the kitchen. How much better would the world would be? Yes, clearly. Clearly the problem was that we didn't have America baking Godfrey a sandwich. Oh, yeah. You guys are too much. Oh. Oh. Yeah, then we just have the regular thing here, so... Yeah, there's nothing really Garrus related I think we could connect outside of Sage's thing. So if we cut out the stuff here... The only question then would be, where the hell is that goddamn item, that the Noble Corp should have? At Revenger Shack. Because we don't get any items from killing Garrus beyond, his weapon, right? It's his weapon and, Wait, is there anything else? I think Radahn simply accepted his role as Lord, so when Godfrey accepted his role, forcing him to lose something else for Radahn, his horse, and for Godfrey, his battle lust. Okay. I could, you know, I could see that. I think that's a fair... I think that's a fair way of putting it. But yeah, I could definitely see it being something like, well, you know what? I wouldn't have wanted this if we were still fighting in Caelid, you know. But... since I'm already dead, my entire story of heroism is kind of already, you know, dead with it, right? Like, I've kind of lost everything here. At the very least, you're promising to weave me a new hero's legend, from this great battle that was take place in Caelid, leading to you resurrecting me, and thus us creating a new world order of kindness, as you say, right? Kindness and strength, right? And I get to enforce it with my strength. I can live with that, right? I definitely think Radahn could live with that. But again, I don't know. It could also just be brainwashing. That might be the twig talking. Horse is probably dead. Horse is most definitely dead. I have to look about the use of vows and stuff then, Sub-Zero. Because that I'm not so sure about. Alright, so I think I've got all the Garrus lore I can then. I think Garrus... I think the Ravenmount assassin items in Garrus's thing, in the different chests, is to highlight how Garrus is collecting relics that he finds on Gelmir that are the last remnants of that Deathbird culture, which has been mostly eliminated from the plateau. My original thought process was that... Where are they? Oh, I know there's one down here. My original thought process was that Altus Blooms are some sort of plant which evolved around the gold of the Elden Ring / Erdtree, right? But, well, DLC is showing that is probably not the case. In that case... I swear, finding this thing. I find Roa fruit, right? Instead, it seems like it's more like the Golden Roa, where it's an existing plant that was on the plateau since before the Erdtree, and then when the Erdtree showed up, it imbued it with gold. One thing I've noticed is that the Altus Bloom is used in perfuming as an ignition. combine Ultis Blooms with the Miranda Powder, which is a medium for dispersing. So when you throw and disperse the stuff, the powder is used to, you know, get that stuff out there. And then the Ultis Bloom is used as ignition to create Spark Aromatic. Now, Spark is like, you know, fire, right? Not like electric spark, more like, you know, fire spark. So, and you see that similar stuff with the other perfumes and stuff with how it's being used. It seems to more or less serve that purpose of being like an ignition, that it sort of catalyzes everything, so it either becomes like a fine dust powder in the case of stuff like involving budding cave moss instead of the Miranda powder, right? And stuff like that. Or like when you take the blood boil aromatic, it's like blood boil, right? And you get the stuff for the blood and the limiting effect with like the arterial leaf or whatever, but then you get 2 Ultis Blooms and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, I think considering that the Ultis Bloom was used before the Erd Tree to for burials and funerals and stuff, I think whether or not it was originally gold probably wasn't. But I think Ultis Blooms originally evolved up here because Gelmir was where the Deathbirds were rooted. So this entire area was similar to the Karo grave and the Cerulean coast with the red and blue flowers. You just had Ultis Blooms here instead. And I think I think probably, if I had to guess, I would not be surprised if Jagged Peak was also a Deathbird area, and the Deathbird just migrated, the Deathbird mother migrated between the 2 peaks, right? Kind of fitting with that duality they showcase, you know, 2 areas, 2 mountaintops, you know, 2 places that have been taken over by new forces, dragons and snakes. Is there an odd relic out in Garrus's cave? No. Maybe that's what the killed guy in Leonia had? No, unfortunately. There's no corpse. There's no random item you can pick up. Everything in this area is in chests. It's all stored away properly, right? Which makes sense, right? Garrus is going through. He's like, okay, I'll take this, I'll take that, I'll take that, and I'll put it all away. Speaking of the Golden Roa, how is the Roe in Roa written compared to the Roe in Rodale for the JP text? From what I recall, it's just Ro and then Ah. So, like, literally Ro, Ah. I might have to go double check that, though, because I don't think there's an Oo sound there, right? I don't think there's anything that would simulate necessarily a W, but though again, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling it Roa or Roa or however, you know, right? I think the way they render it is fine locally. But point is, I think it's just Roa, and yes, it would be the same Ro that you would see in like Rodale, right? Or yeah, you know, Lowdale. It's like Rodale. Low, it's like low day, Lowdale, Lowdale light. No. That I would not jump to, because again, Japanese, especially with katakana and, you know, like especially with the katakana and stuff, it's a syllabic, I guess that'd be the term, like language. So like, a row is a row. There is no like, in terms of like, you know, like in terms of like katakana, as far as we're talking about, it's always going to be rendered as row by itself. If it was something like, Rhoda, or something like that, or like, I don't know, like Rhodalia, or something like that, or something of that nature, I would be more inclined to be like, okay, yeah, it's probably referencing. But just a row, I think that's a really tough case to make by itself. Like, there'd have to be, like, a really good, like, juxtaposition there. We also have Roa that are not, obviously, we have Roa that exists, like, everywhere, not just on, Altus as well, so. Radonka Cosbeat. No! Oh god, that image. Man, sucks to deal with the crazies, am I right? Could be based on Row 1? I don't know how that name would be rendered in Japanese, so I would have to look into that for you to see if that's possible. Yeah, there's nothing else I can think of that could connect it. Like, none of the items that we see around, none of the things that we pick up or anything, right? Like, occasionally we'll find magic grease and stuff on Altus, which isn't that weird because, again, magic grease is made with the crystal buds, which we find on Altus everywhere, so... That by itself is not that weird, right? It's like, sure, yeah. I can imagine someone crafting, you know, someone locally crafting that magic grease using the crystal buds you pick up in this area. There's nothing really here, though, right? Yeah, we just go over to this other cave here. Seek water, right? What are you waiting for, buddy? Oh no! The bodies are hitting the floor! Now Garrus, now we know that Garrus's weapon was made here at Gelmir. Because it's made from the same red copper that the Snakeman's shields are. Like that very specific kind of red copper. So either he got it from here at Fort Lyde, or... Actually, is there anything in Fort Lyde which is suspicious? Or he got into Volcano Manor itself and got access to the materials, at least. Because I assume the red copper is made or manufactured involving the lava. Because otherwise, why the hell would you specifically make sure it's the, you know, the kind that has the kanji for red, you know, red in it, right? Like, you could have picked any of the other terms for, like, copper, bronze, you know, all that jazz. But you specifically wanted, like, that red kind of bronze look. I still can't believe this isn't a boss fight, you know? I feel like they would have made this an early game boss fight at one point, you know? Yeah, we have some items here, but I don't know if any of them are any... Yeah, there's the open chest, because this guy took it, and it's right here, right? That could be it. That would be the type of thing we'd want to see if the missing item is actually somewhere else in the game world. At the very least, we'd want to be keeping track of all items that don't have corpses attached and look at those as possible answers to the implicit question. Because looking at some of the stuff with Garrus and stuff, some of the stuff with Garrus and Adon and stuff, it's gotten so subtle that I am willing to accept that there may be literally just some random item out there that in its full context might be actually telling something important. Smo Jr., yep. Nope, yeah, I know, no. It doesn't exist, it should, but it doesn't. Right, doing his thing here. Them doing their thing there. It's just a particle effect. Yep. It's just a tiny particle. Is Garrus Pinwheel? He's more Pinwheel than Pinwheel ever was, I'll say that. All those crazy Pinwheel theories. Who knows? Maybe Miyazaki saw those theories. It was like, you know what? That's not the canon, but you know what? I really like that idea. I'll steal it. It'd be really funny if Miyazaki actually like reads all the theories that all the communities come up with, or he has someone who like goes through and like curates them for it, or he just hears it down the grapevine or whatever, and he's just like, oh wow, wow, I never did that, but oh, that's a good idea, and then he just makes it as a reference. That'd be so funny considering we have like you know, like cross-dressing the hunter lady or whatever connected to Celovus, and people make like the Ferris connection. And the trailers, one is a boss instead of the wolf of a Ratigan. Oh. Well, I guess it's not confirmed if it was necessarily a boss because it's a trailer, right? So they don't have the health bar showing or anything like that, right? But yeah, I guess that's true. Though, I can kind of get it if they were going with the idea that, like, the prelates betray, like, some of the prelates, like, the prelate and some of the fire monks or whatever defected to Rhea Lucaria, because we do see that, you know, some of their weapons and stuff, like the turbo tanks, got requisitioned, we'll say, by the Cuckoo. So I could totally see that happening. But yeah, that's a little weird though to make that the boss. I'm glad it's Red Wolf of Ratigan instead. A Rowan tree also saved the life of the god Thor in Norse mythology when he was swept away by a river. Suppose the Rowan trees had ritual purposes for carving runes too, but I need to find more sources. Yeah, like I said, I'll look into the Rowan thing, see if there could be a connection, because if nothing else, the Rowan connection could be, you know, legit. Hermit Village. Now this, I 100% expect nothing Garrus related to be, right? Because I'm pretty sure it's just stuff related to the Academy and things. Obviously the enemies, you got that thing there. There's nothing really Death Pagan-y involved here. I think maybe you get a lava art here. I think that's from one of the shacks or something before we go. How you doing, girl? Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, Loki, one thing that would be of interest. I remembered that DS3's cut Lonely King of the Ruined Capital likely ain't Wolnir, but Old Demon King Plus. Really? Really? Huh, I'm curious to hear the full reasoning for that, Nobre. That's interesting, though, if the idea was to have an old variant of Old Demon King there. Do you think Shadow Altus region was south of the normal Altus in the chat? Okay, oh boy, chat. Listen, Sub-Zero did it. It wasn't me. I am not to blame for this. But since he did so, it's time I pull up my handy-dandy chart. Alright, so first, let's bring this here. There we go. So first off, just to make sure we're clarifying for everybody, here we go, Timeline 5 version, the most up-to-date version of my timeline for the games. Oh no. Xavier knows. He's been to all these streams. He's seen it so many times. So first off, we got here, yeah, okay, you guys can't see it, but I can make it slightly smaller. There you go. Perfect. There we go. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Alright, so here we go. We have the timeline. So, when do we get the Realm of Shadow as we know it? Right here. So we got Marika gives birth to the Erd Tree, which happens, of course, in the Realm of Shadow, but, you know, let's just call it the Shadowlands for the sake of simplicity. So, Marika gives birth to the Erd Tree, goes through the Gate of Divinity, becomes God, gets a seed of the Earth Tree, plants it, becomes the Erd Tree that grows up, that's growing up, up through Altus, right? Hoarah becomes Godfrey, so Hoarah fights for Marika, topples the Sun Capital, defeats Siraj, but then takes up the name Godfrey or whatever and has Siraj do some stuff. There's a lot of interesting stuff for now with Siraj, now that we've added context on how Godfrey's barbarian culture were all about animals and becoming beasts, which is actually kind of already there in the base game with the Magnus guy they added. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Then he goes and unifies the plateau. They banish all the banish knights and exile soldiers and stuff to Stormvale to set up the penal colony there, right, on Stormhill. Then Godfrey and chaps go up and fight the giants on the mountaintops. They win. Then they get to basically start their proper Age of the Erdtree / Age of Plenty. That beautiful golden age eventually gets, becomes a bit of a downer when Melina betrays Marika, becomes the Glowmite Queen, starts hunting down demigods and turning them into godskin robes. And the serpent who was ostensibly on Marika's side and all that stuff, and probably has a cultural connection to her, so she was kind of willing to tolerate it because of that history, with her peoples, but also betrays her. And so Godfrey goes and kills the snake, probably using the serpent hunter, while, Marika has Malekith, kill, Melina, and seal destined, death inside his sword. So, right? So then we go into the Crucible starts dying. The moment Malekith seals destined death inside the sword, it dying. Marika begins researching order because she's like, this is not what I was planning. This was not the plan. I'm supposed to become the Eternal Queen. Why are you doing not being eternal, my tree? So she does the first inklings of fundamentalism. Then we get to Mesmer, beginning the purge. So, meanwhile, she's like, I gotta stop, so that way nobody ever is going to betray me like this again, especially my own children. I don't want any more Empyreans who are going to potentially end me as a god. Well, how am I going to do that when I have this gated divinity that the Hornsent have steward over? What if they get killed or whatever, or something happens or they betray me as well, and they work with someone to create the gate, to go through the gate or whatever, become a god, yada yada yada, right? What if all that stuff happens? Well, there's one way to fix that, and that's by, sealing the gate and killing all the Hornsent who could possibly have any knowledge or stewardship of it, and we're going to actually hide the entire land of which all this is happening on, inside a separate dimension, which is the Realm of Shadow. So, the Realm of Shadow only exists because Marika wants to make sure to hide all of this jazz. So what was the Realm of Shadow before then? Hopefully this will work. Go into my Maps folder now. Go to the Edits. And then we got, does this work? Oh god, no. Does this work? There we go. Okay. You know, this is the conifer, this is the conifer, mapping I've done. Da-da-da, 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 da-da. Okay, yeah, this is talking about the winds for the conifers and stuff and travel. This is about questions I've had, da-da-da, this is about Farum Azula. Okay, here we go. So this would be roughly how I put the Realm of Shadow. Now, this is not one-to-one between the lands between the Realm of Shadow. Again, I think anyone who's actually done a serious attempt at this has all shown that you cannot do a one-to-one between the Shadowlands and the lands between. It just doesn't work. So we got the, akin to the Lone King of the Ruined Capital, the Sandworm's internal name is, Ruined Capital, Sandworm. So, and there are, the King's Attacks, which match that of Old Iron Kings. What do you mean by the King's Attacks? Do we actually, have, data on that at all? Legit curious about that. Anyway, consider on Discord if you want. Sure. Yeah, okay, you know what? That is true, Nobre. It is shared with the Lost City of Izalith as well, right? But the thing with the Lost City of Izalith is that Ruined Capital terminology. It's fairly, you see it in several places in Dark Souls, not just Izalith. But yeah, I get what you're saying. There's obviously a parallel there. Well, Mjolnir's internally named the King of the Dead, yeah. That's odd, though, because all the trailers do show him in the Profane Capital. So I guess the idea would be he's at the Profane Capital, but he's not the Ruined King. He's not the Ruined Capital King. So he may have always been in, a smoldering lake is what you're saying. The name is not being applied to Mjolnir, it's being applied... Okay, gotcha. We have their attack names, basically. Cool. The DLC is about to require a lot more Conifer. It isn't! The Conifer mapping for the DLC is literally just... It's everywhere. It's the same as Altis, where I'm just I'm not gonna be... I could probably get more granular when it comes to Altis, but there's no point. It's basically, there's no, selectiveness where it's oh, it's important because there's some... It's more or less evenly distributed in random places throughout this entire area. Right? It's a lot more selective here. Jeez, I wonder why we find none of those tree spirits on the summit. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. Nobrae's distracting me with something very important, but more important is what Sub-Zero is asking. So the maps are not one-to-one. So the question is, okay, well then how is this supposed to fit if it's only supposed to be loosely taken, right? You know, we're not supposed to necessarily think that it's all gonna perfectly line up if you tried to attach it that way, but if we were trying to, in the abstract, think about where anything would be located relative to each other, my answer would be something like this. Now, you can maybe move it a little further down, more to the left, more to the right. Like, again, this is not perfect by any means. I did do a thing to kind of get the idea. This is the quote-unquote center of the lands between here, right? That's the suppressing tower, or pillar, or whatever it's called, right? And it does actually line up surprisingly well, right? Now, obviously, a lot of this you can cut off. So this is a bit extra added space. I guess you could argue whether or not you want to include it. But let's be honest, when it says it's the center of the lands between, I'm not expecting it to be like pinpoint, like, oh my god, we're going to make sure that every single like little pixel is going to be exactly within this, you know, vaguely defined center, right? So I think just generally putting it here in the middle works fine. And then when we take in other factors like the Divine Towers, again, all the Divine Towers are consistently, you know, up to the water. So this is when Farum Azula was still here, right? So when there's still like a land bridge through Farum Azula and stuff like that, you have the tower there, you have the tower down there. This is me trying to figure out how the hell this stupid pathing would work to get to this tower beforehand. But, you know, that's neither here. You know, that, again, this is all for the, you know, just kind of, you know, think about it in the abstract. You know, maybe there was remnants of it when the Shadow Keep was, but they built around it, over it, or whatever. Anyway, so, yeah, like I said, that's for the conifer travel path through the winds and shit like that. Again, here, again, do not be fooled by how the map shows this. All of this is sheer cliff. This is all just more water. So it's, there's water. Basically, you have these two, which are also basically just facing water and stuff like that. And then, of course, you know, with Limgrave and things, right? You got here, right? Limgrave and Liurnia. So, what we would be wanting to look at... No, not here. Not you. There we go. Is something like this. We'd want to have something where they're all going to still be allowed to face the water, but there's still the landmass here to help connect it up north. Which is totally possible with the scenario that I drafted here, right? Again, this is me literally just layering it one-to-one on top, as we can see. It ain't working, right? Like, you got Cerulean Coast here, and it's overlapping with the actual land masses and stuff. You have this that's all over Stormvale Castle and all that, and you're supposed to have all these boats and things which are like, you know, floating over and stuff. So like, it's all one big mess. How high would that land bridge have to be still be connected to the mountains? Which land bridge are we talking about? Are we talking about the Forbidden Lands, or do you mean for Shadow Altus to Altus, for example? Anyway, the point is that basically it should be something like this, right? That more or less vaguely, somewhere between these two areas, about where, like, let's say the Sun Capital was, like, specific, because we have, like, fortified mana here. So let's say Sun Capital was, like, here, right? Actually, now I have to wonder about that. What if this was the front entrance to the Sun Capital once upon a time? I'm curious where the sun setting and rising comes in, because that would be, because the way we see it, we know that like they'd like to have the sun behind it. So I wonder if you could theoretically get that to work with this thing here. I guess we should look at that. Anyway, point is that you have fortified mana here. So let's say Sun Capital was like right here, and it took up like this much space or whatever, right? So you got like about, this is where the Erd Tree, it's about where the Erd Tree would be. Shadow Tree is also about here-ish, right? So all of that would more or less line up. Like I said, you could probably, you know, could you shrink this more? Could you, like, edit it, what have you? Could you probably be twisted or whatever? Maybe, but this should be generally getting you what we want. Oh, the hypothetical Farum Azula land bridge, if it linked the mountains in Caelid. That I don't know. I don't know how tall or high or how they would justify that or whatever. Especially when it's something like the Giants, because the Giants could, like, you know... Let's go to the image we have here, right? Because obviously I'm just showing it for the purposes of this thing here, but it would have to go... like, basically, probably to about here-ish, at least. Right? Again, it's really weird to see here, but, like, this waterfall area actually extends, like, up to, like, here. Like, it goes a lot farther out than what the map shows you. Which makes sense, because you can't actually go to that spot anyway. You can only go here, so. So let's see. So basically what I'm trying to get at is that this would be how Altus and Shadow Altus would have connected once upon a time, right? And then another cool detail, as I don't have it here. A cool detail here is how the Langdell Coliseum, all the two of the three Coliseums have the Erd Tree more or less behind it, right? So you have Marika with her iconic pose, backdropped against the Erd Tree. Except for the Langdell Coliseum. Then you can always make the argument, oh, you know, the canopy is kind of bridging over above that or whatever, right? You can make it. But I think the more interesting observation is how the Tower of Divinity would more or less be behind it in this scenario. So you can make the very real case that for the very first Colosseum that was made, it wasn't about backdropping Marika with the Erd Tree to represent her godhood. It was with the tower, which had the actual Gate of Divinity. And the tower would be, again, it's a tower, so even if it from far away, it would still be, you know, decently sized and, you know, have Marika there, you know, doing her pose from behind, in front of it. So you're saying the Shadow Tree and the Erd Tree right next to each other? No, I'm saying that the location of the Shadow Tree should more or less line up with the location of the Erd Tree relative to the Realm of Shadow. So to clarify, I think there was always a realm, so I think the moment that the Erd Tree was born, was created, a separate dimension, which we call the Shadowland, the Shadow Realm, the whatever you want to put it, right? Was also created, and it had in it a Shadow Tree. What Marika did is when we go down the timeline to Messmer's Crusade, she dragged the center of this lands between, this landmass, into the Shadow Realm. So she basically said, I'm gonna take this entire land and just yeet it down into oblivion, right? So it was all thrown into a different dimension where the Shadow Tree is. Now, the Shadow Tree was always in the Shadow Realm, but the Shadow Realm didn't always have this land that gave it the name the Land of Shadow, or the Shadowlands, Shadow Realm, right? The lands could have been lower than it is than now. We see Blackstone ruins inside Cave. Again, it could be that there's some collapse or something that happened there. I mean, that's where it's like, okay, we're getting way too in the weeds, and how much of this is like, okay, has it been buried? Was it actually made like that intentionally, and this was kind of going underground for some special reason? Like, there's several scenarios there. I'd want to learn more about the individual civilizations before I go into, okay, yeah, maybe there was some cataclysmic event which caused, like, you know, somehow that one ruin and none of the others to really go underground, right? Like, we see, like, with Rao, some of the stuff gets built into the rock, too, for example, right? So it's not that weird if there's, an area that may have gotten buried, but it was always built into the rock like that, and the rock itself hasn't really been, you know, elevation hasn't really changed. Once you're in Langdell proper, that, like, Source does some crazy things. Yeah, I can imagine. The problem is that goddamn Erd Tree and stuff, right? To clarify, do you think the Shadow Tree even predates Marika becoming a god? No. I think, again, the trailer makes it clear. When Gold was born, so was Shadow. So when Marika became god, and she got, I guess, the seed of the Erd Tree or whatever, from the two fingers or what have you, right? That seed, which she planted, gave birth to a golden tree. Again, that's what Erd Tree is in the Japanese text. It's the golden tree. The Shadow Tree, or the Shadow Tree in the Japanese script, was also born, essentially. So you had gold, and then you had shadow. So gold, light, golden tree, comes to be. There's a separate dimension now, a shadow dimension, where the shadow, the literal, you know, kind of like, you know, the literal, you know, cosmological, however this cosmology works with the spirits and all that shit, Shadow Tree also gets born at the same time, and they exist in parallel with each other. And all Marika did was be like, okay, I know there's this Shadow Tree to my Erd Tree, which exists in this Shadow Realm. I'm going to drag this area where the Hornsent are in and just yeet it all into that Shadow Realm. So, yeah, this is basically what happens. Now we know Shadow Altus is not, it's not an extension of Altus per se, because it's referred to as occupied territory by Messmer, and it's just named for, it's just named after the actual Altus, which makes sense. It's a plateau, like Altus, but it's lower. It's obviously clearly lower than the actual Altus plateau and stuff like that, in terms of relative of, like, what we see and stuff like there. It doesn't have any of the same foliage or things as Altus does, like, you know, like with the Altus blooms and stuff like that. So it's clearly supposed to be a separate lower highland that exists. Kind of similar to how, like, things are a little bit taller in this part of Liurnia, but then gets lower and lower as we get closer to the frontier. It's the same idea here, where it's like, it's highlands here, so there's a plateau here, a plateau there, right? But it gets lower and lower until we get back to the coast down here, right? With Rao here and all that stuff. So basically, all of this area that got taken over is what Mesmer comes in, he plants his flag, builds his castle, and says, this is Shadow Altus now. This will be my Altus Plateau. No, I mean Langdell's view of the sun. It practically does a full lap around the right. Like I said, but that's what I'm saying, Night Scouts, that the Erdtree being there makes it harder to actually, you know, look at what the sun is doing and stuff. So, again, it's just weird, like you said. I get you with what you're saying is how it warps and does weird things in Langdell itself, but I'm trying to say is, like, you know, the Erdtree being there is absolutely, like, a huge factor into why things are so weird with trying to, like, talk about the sun and stuff there. Because it's like, okay, like, it's going behind it, it's going in front of it, like, you kind of, it's annoying to follow. Is the Land of Shadow the realm of the dead, like the Helfin, or this game's version of the Afterlife? I don't think so. I think the Helfin is something entirely separate. The way the Helfin is described and the way we see the Shadow Tree, I think there's too much of a difference for them to be the same thing. I don't see any direct connection with the Shadow Tree and what the Helfin would be. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe. Maybe it is. But so far, I don't think there's a connection. Yeah, so, more or less, again, to give the long and short of it, you have Altus Plateau here, you have Shadow Altus somewhere around here, you have Rao would be also here, which again, we have the Rao Precipice and stuff here, so that's more reasonable than if we're trying to believe that there was ruins that would extend out, right? Also have the bridges and stuff going across here. Then you have the Suppression Pillar down here, you have Jagged Peak here, and like I said before, there's this idea that Mount Gelmir is, you know, the Crow Mountain, Raven Mount. And there's probably some, like, migration thing, I think, happened here. Where you basically have Mother Bird goes from this peak to this peak, right? She goes from Crow Peak to Jagged Peak. And the idea was, like, you know, oversees the death here, oversees the death there. Maybe the idea was to help her cover, like, the entire regions here. Ultimately, though, the idea was clearly that, you know, whatever she was doing up here in the north, ultimately she would be coming here, because this is where all the death was, like, you know, gathering and assimilating. And anyway, the point that I want to make, and this goes back to the Altus Blooms, since we're now on that topic, is that if Altus Blooms are for ignition and stuff, and they have a inherently, like, even beyond them being colored gold, like, assuming the gold thing is just a superficial addition from the Erdtree, if before there was even an Erdtree, they were being used in funerals and stuff, it makes sense in the context of, oh, they ignite things. You bury the bodies with Altus Blooms back then, because then the Death Birds who would take those bodies could use the Altus Blooms to cremate your body. And you create the whole Ghost Flame Ember things. So I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So Altus Blooms were essentially being used as part of the cremation process, and it was sort of this ritual where you would bury them with it as part of the funeral, as a way to be like, okay, we hope you get cremated properly. And then obviously with the Erdtree coming in and erasing all the death pagans, then you got now the Altus Blooms looking gold and not really having much of a purpose until perfumers start appearing, when Marika's, again, goes back to my timeline, starts researching her own Elden Ring and her own order and all that stuff. She's getting the first inklings of fundamentalism, and part of that process is establishing perfumers as a priestly discipline. Maybe the Shadow Tree replaced the Helfin? Maybe. Maybe. I can believe it. Like I said, I've not done any deep dives of the, I've not done any deep dives of the, of a lot of this game, right? Especially when it has to do with, death and all that stuff. I still consider myself a neophyte when it comes to this game's lore. Though I will say, I am quite amazed by just how much of these plants we're finding. I don't think I've picked up any either yet. Like, these things are just everywhere on Gelmir. I have to wonder if it's actually connected to Miquella or it's some weirder, like, recontextualization thing. That or Miquella really got around up here on Gelmir. You've only played for 82 minutes after all! This is very true, I've only played for 82 minutes. Oh god, this is gonna be a meme we're gonna keep alive for a while, isn't it? Alright, I want to look at this thing, and then I think we'll call it. Anyway, again, Sub-Zero, I'm sorry to regale you with the long speech and all that stuff, but I hope that kind of answers where I stand on all this. Like I said, I'm slowly working my way through. I'm starting to like get with the DLC now as like added data. I'm starting to really like get a holistic idea of like what the DLC is doing compared to what the base game was trying to do and how they all gel together and stuff like that. Like, I'm really happy with the Garrus thing. Because the stuff with Garrus enriches my understanding of the astrologer lore, specifically with Celia. It enriches my understanding of, obviously, the Deathbird lore and all that stuff involving it, because, you know, it enriches my understanding of the Crow Mountain thing, because for the longest time I was like, oh, okay, it's like, it has to be, is it the mountaintops? Is it, Gelmir? Like, what other peaks could there be, or whatever? It can't be anywhere else, or whatever. But it's like, okay, now I feel very firmly strong with the Garrus lore. It's like, okay, no. With the Raven Mountain Assassins, this confirms it for me. Gelmir is Crow Mountain, and something happened. I don't know. It could be something as simple as the Deathbird mother got eaten by the Gelmir snake. Like the immortal great snake basically devoured her and you know, gulped her down, shat her out or something. Thanks for the lore dump, Loki. I'm sure it won't be the last time I hear it. I'm sure it won't. I'm sure it won't. I'm sure someone else is gonna definitely ask that question. Make me bring out the fancy charts. Torture. It's not torture. It's just the cycle of life among outer gods. You know how it is. The predator outer god eats the prey outer god. And if it's, you know, two predator outer gods, well, you know, someone's got to be the prey in that scenario. Again, ignore the fact that this is like the Langdell thing that they set up here and all that jazz. I'm just wondering about the basic premise. Like, could we imagine, once upon a time, the Sun Capital sat here, and the sun would have set over here? I love joining in randomly out of context. Free game. What are we discussing? Oh, he's just discussing stuff about Realm of Shadow and crap. Again, you guys can always go back in the vids and stuff, so I don't mind if some of you guys come late and don't know what's happening, because don't worry. I'm sure no one listening to me ramble knows what's happening either. Well, I think that convenient. Alright. It's nighttime. We need to fix that. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm planning to do, Night Scout. We just need to make it... We just need to make it daytime. Oh my god. Oh my god. Who asked for this? Is there a place in the base game where the Erd Tree sap was collected? Because Shadow Tree has a really fancy setup. I don't recall anything like that for the Erd Tree. I think there's just the palaces stuff here. I think the idea is, like, you just get it from the Elden Throne area. I don't think there was, like, a vessel specifically for collecting it. I mean, I guess you could... Nah, because there's the symbol... Those things are very clearly symbolic, the way they're set up and used. The only thing we really have is, like, we have the distribution center, which was the Second Church America, right? Like, I want to distribute it to all my people across my domain. Okay, I'm gonna just, you know, plop a church right here and, you know, hand it out to everybody here at the center, right? I can now give it to anybody who comes and wants it, right? Obviously, we have the individual churches, like the First Church America. This was here, right? But these are, like, to commemorate events and stuff, right? The whole drop thing is, like, a secondary benefit. Okay, good. Alright, I think this is good. go. I love times 5 speed. Alright, let's find the good angle. Let's find the good angle. Alright, so this is more or less like, this is the closest we're gonna get to, like, center. So, if this was, hypothetically, where the Sun Capital's original, entrance was, like we see depicted on the shield, then, in theory, if the depiction is accurate on how the sun would rise and or set behind it. Alright, let's go. Like, currently we're at, I'm gonna turn off game speed for a second. Because, yeah, it's not showing, so I think what we need to do... Yeah, okay, good. Is Elden Ring as well read as Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1? I do not feel qualified to answer that question, because, again, I feel I'm a neophyte when it comes to this game, and I just don't know enough to accurately judge all of it. I would say there are parts of this game that I think it is worse than Dark Souls, and it's parts of this game that I think is better. How that, you know, battles out on the whole, I do not know. It's really hard when you're talking about a game that this is big and this complicated, because there's a lot of moving parts. Alright, so, this is about midday. So this is about 5 o'clock. Go to 6. It's about 8. 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so the sun should be at its zenith. It's going over. Alright, so it should be behind the capital now. We're now past 2 o'clock. It doesn't look like it's heading that direction. It looks like it might be going a little bit more westward. Yeah, look, see how the shadows are? Yeah. So this would probably be, like, the best angle I would get if I just was purely looking at that stuff. I sent a wall text in Discord explaining why me, the Lonely King, likely is old Demon King rather than Wolnir. No problem, no, Bray. I'll read through it when we're done here. Damn, that's pretty. Yeah, this game is so pretty, isn't it? Alright, there's the reflection. So, the sun is located over there right now. Right? Setting somewhere in the west. Is there a point where the sun is positioned to send the shadows out straight from the gate? No. Not that I noticed. We could try going earlier, though, just to confirm. But yeah, see how it's there? I'm going to keep the thing up here, just to see if we can have a better look from the water where the sun is supposed to be. You know, it seems like it just rises, so... Like, this would be it at, like, sunset areas. This is it when it's a little up above the horizon now. And now it's here. Like I said, this is midday. This is when it's straight up above. If I had to guess, something around here would probably be where the sun would need to be in order to make what we're saying work. So would it couldn't be something where it was directly, but it would have to be something where, like, around this moment, if it was, like, somewhere here. Then it could probably work with how the Sun Capital shield is depicted. But it wouldn't be something where it'd be always rising and setting, like, in front of or behind the capital as we know it here. Right? So if this is theoretically the last remnants of the Sun Capital, and it actually had its main entrance here. You crossed a bridge, and across this bridge was the capital's walls and structure as we see it in the Sunrealm Shield. If that is in fact true. Also, I love how it doesn't show the Ashen one. So this is when it stopped showing Ash. Anyway. If that's true, I think it would probably be around this angle. Because, unfortunately, we can't see it. We just don't see the actual thing. I will never get over seeing some of that jazz here. Yeah. It's like that silly string stuff, you know, for parties and crap. They still have the odd DS3 sun reflection in the ocean, even though it is in your water. You can't actually physically see it. Reminds me of a slime mold. I can see it. What spot on Leyndell's walls best aligns with the sun as it rises? What do you mean by best spot on Leyndell's walls? Do you mean in terms of like with the lightings on it? Because if that's the case, like obviously midday, and then earlier than that, like around like, you know, between like 8 and 11, I think it probably is most on the walls at this angle. Right now, it's obviously at the opposite angle. Elden Ring is a Game of Thrones, but all the nitty-gritty details taken out. I always thought the style of Dark Souls storytelling doesn't fit Elden Ring lore because it's overwhelming mythos and themes. I wouldn't say that. I think there's still, I think it's a style choice. I don't think it's. I think it's a style choice, and I think in terms of what the story that they're trying to get at, you still get all the details. Now, you could argue that it's not really as, the story that they actually do get to tell, because of the style, is not necessarily as epic or grandiose, right? As having, like, say, a book which can tell you, oh, there were, like, 5,000 soldiers, and right, like, you could probably get, like, more of that type of granular detail, right, in another medium, but in terms of the Dark Souls storytelling, there's this is some of the best From Software has come up with. I won't deny that. Now, some of the actual stories and stuff, maybe I'm not too crazy about, or I think they're kind of boring or lame, or maybe not all of them are executed necessarily as well as they could be, right? Or maybe it doesn't integrate well into the game medium or something, right? Like people complain about mountaintops all the time. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say having this expansive mythos and stuff is harmed Elden Ring, because then you would have to make the same argument for Dark Souls, because Dark Souls, after all 3 games, has a similarly large mythos as Elden Ring, at least in all 3 games, and that definitely doesn't harm it whatsoever. Where the city is between the sunrise and the camera, in case the Sunrealm Gate aligned with the sunrise instead. Like I said, I think here where we're at now is the best angle. I guess if you wanted to put it the opposite way, I guess if you wanted to look at it like, say, here, then you would have to have the sun going to about, what would it be? I would probably say about 7 a.m., 8 a.m. Let's test that. Oh. Whoopsie. Here. No, that's not what we want. Okay, let's try to get as close as we can to the hour. Come on, just give me the extra 0.6. There we go. 7.9. Okay, so this is more or less about 8 a.m. So it's there. That's the spot. So I think something like that would be best. If we wanted it. Yeah, see? Because then you would have that spot right there. That would probably be the best argument you can make for it. The problem is you can't really do it with that angle because you have both the bridge and the manor here. So it kind of just is awkward. And with how they have the the graveyard on this side, I think it makes more sense for this to be the main entrance for sure. I think the sun is in the west at the beach too. Yeah, in general, I think the way the sunset and stuff works. I think you only see it in Limgrave and maybe Caelid. Actually, no, I think Caelid's just red sky, right? A guy on YouTube named, if I recall correctly, Bluebird has a good ambiance video showing it. Oh, you can see the sun on some Altus mornings, but usually only when it's clear up to rare fog. I remember seeing it in Limgrave, but that's about it. I think they could have done more with the politics and actual wars themselves. That's what harmed it, and the lack of cosmology exploration in the DLC is what has the feeling the most. Again, the thing with a lot of the cosmology in the games is that they're shown, not told. So they're kind of like the rules you have to pick up on by observation. So again, as someone who has been doggedly refusing to do that type of work myself, I'm just not in a position to judge that. I can only really judge like the stuff that has to do with like, you know, the individual vignettes, the stuff that were actually like the basics on what we have on some of the characters and stuff, and what I've already done with deep dives and things. I think there's a lot of good that Elden Ring has done. I think the biggest problem with it being a, say, Dark Souls style story and stuff like that is that you don't get any good factoids on like families and stuff, and it feels weird to me that when we're talking about lineages and things, right? Like, we don't have, like, we're basically kind of just left up in the air to be like, okay, Godric and Godefroy and stuff, they're, like, related, and they're all connected to, you know, the golden lineage of Godfrey and stuff. How does that, family tree shake out? Who knows? It's one of those things where it's kind of like, okay. Like, if this was obviously a Martin book or something, you could probably have, like, at least a page probably dedicated to showing what the family tree looks like. And if I had to guess, that probably is exactly what it is on Martin's actual notes that he wrote for Miyazaki and stuff. This should have been the game with the codex and journal. There's a reason other worlds have them. I don't think Miyazaki would have wanted to compromise on that for his story. I think after Demon Souls, he does not want to do codexes. I agree with you. I think there should be a codex for enemies and things, so at the very least, official names of enemies can be known, and you just have, like, some generic blurb about enemies and stuff in there. I definitely think it could be integrated in a way that it adds to the storytelling, right? And that this would probably be the game to do it, but I understand why he didn't want to do anything like that. I mean, I have no complaints about the way I went through this game and uncovered, you know, details and story bits and stuff, like, as is. I don't think there's any problem with that. These are games that you are almost never going to have a true, total, and proper understanding of on one singular playthrough. As I think the years I've now dedicated to, you know, parsing through this very slowly, I might add, has shown. It's just the nature of the beast. You either like it or you don't. You'll get that with Night Rain. Yeah, Night Rain, again, Night Rain is like roguelike. You know, it's different. Miyazaki has basically allowed the new director, you know, the other Zaki, to have free reign there. I think Miyazaki also wanted to have more Sekiro gameplay in ER, maybe. Well, you can see that with, you know, the stealthing. You know, they added certain stealth stuff and things and mechanics that they did bring over from Sekiro. And the posture bar and all that stuff. But I think, in general, this is more him iterating on Dark Souls than I think it's iterating on Sekiro. It's very obvious. Sekiro is an action game, with maybe some quote-unquote RPG elements. Elden Ring is an RPG with, you know, action elements. If the Ariza Heroes Grave marks the general area the Ariza Lu tribe live, the Golden Order might have begun the war marching south. No, I don't think that's the case. I think it's buried there because I think that's where they first started burying the dead and stuff because of the conflict here. So they bury the Sun Capital tribe here, and after taking, you know, razing and destroying the capital, they start burying their own people here. That's what I think that's for, right? And then Marika starts taking out, later on with Radagon and stuff, start taking out some of the bodies from this hero's grave, start messing with them to create the gargoyles, and then take the leftover meat and stuff them in jars and throw them in the Aside Tomb. Yeah. Honestly, with what we know in the DLC now, it's very likely that, Godfrey and stuff was probably living here on, like, Shadow Altus or Rao Base or, you know, somewhere in this northern section here, most likely. Maybe you could argue he was on Altus proper, right? With now what we know with Marika and the Gate of Divinity and stuff, it makes more sense if Godfrey was here in this area. Langdell has its own catacombs, though? Yeah. For those who aren't the heroes of the original tribe there. Who did not fight in the war to literally establish the capital. And we see tons of different people being there. This is for specifically those heroes of the Ariza. You have all the lore you need on a guy whose thing is he died. Yeah. It feels like it wants to be more of an action game than it does an RPG. You're the same character, Husk, and in the same role in the story, just like Dark Souls, just with different endings. Again, this goes into the problems of, like, how do you define an RPG and what makes something, you know, more an RPG, you know, true to an RPG than not, right? The way you get to explore, and, again, go down the different quest lines and stuff for those endings, whether or not you even encounter or, continue or complete any of those quests and stuff like that. Again, the stat sheet, which is usually the reductive way of thinking about it, right? I think all that stuff in accumulation, along with the sort of the blank slate protagonist, does let Elden Ring qualify as an RPG as much as Bloodborne is an RPG or Dark Souls and stuff. Like, let's be honest, Demon Souls and even the original Dark Souls didn't have much in terms of you know, room for growth. You always had two binary endings, right? Elden Ring is the game that gives you the most flexibility because there are so many different types of endings, right? You can argue it's like different colored tree or whatever, but obviously the deeper implications of what you're doing to get that different color for the tree is a lot more meaningful than, say, a Mass Effect. Chaos! Yeah, chaos! I have red tree, blue tree, gold tree, and chaos tree! The way they set up their quest seems like an outdated leftover from Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, but I don't know. I feel like they could expand beyond. Maybe. Again, I have a problem with how they handle the quest. But keep in mind, I'm a person who doesn't care to be a completionist and get all the quest lines. Like, if I skip NPC stuff, that's fine. A lot of times I don't care for the NPC side quests in the first place, right? I like the idea that they're just out there in the world for you to find. If there's anything I would complain about, it's the fact that some of them are maybe too rigid in locking them to you talking to certain NPCs or not. I would have liked it if they were a bit more, they had more examples of, like, you know, quest lines that kind of would just skip over stuff. But I kind of get it. You want to have that important, like, crucial dialogue for the context, right? So, like, it's one of those things where it's like, take it or leave it. Personally, I have more problem with how they handle it in Bloodborne, because why the frick would you ever go to Odin Chapel? Like, you take everyone to Odin Chapel, and the game never really gives you any, like, natural reason for you to want to go there, unless you actually really, really want to talk to, like, the bigot and the really nasty old lady. And Bloodborne is still considered an RPG. Like, that's the genre it's in. It ain't, you know, it ain't just simply action game. Because as you said, if people are having a lot of trouble with quests and missing them, maybe they have more room to grow with them or something in an interview. Yeah, maybe. If they want to change it, that's his prerogative. But I personally don't have an issue with how they handle it for that. You know? I definitely agree with people that because of the nature of the open world, it's easier to miss them, right? But I think that kind of just adds to the experience, especially when you're talking to your friends about, like, oh, I found this guy, and like, oh my god, you know, kind of tailors it to you. Elden Ring sheer size, too. That's one of the main things I don't care too much about it story-wise, because it's just so much stuff that I doubt I can even get a proper picture of things. Yeah. Again, I would agree. It's just so much. It's a lot. It is definitely a lot. Again, I don't think that's really a problem or a detriment to the game, right? I like having a game that I can keep coming back to and chewing on and reflecting and doing that type of stuff, right? That's not everybody. If you want an easily digestible story, though, like, you can go play God of War, where it's literally just a movie with some gameplay in between. And some puzzles where they'll shout out to you exactly what the answer is within 5 seconds, right? Like, if that's what you want, like, you know, we got that, right? Like, I love me my Mass Effects. My Last of Us. It would be great if they made. It'd be great if they made a sequel by Naughty Dog. I mean, it's Naughty Dog after all. I mean, it doesn't really need a sequel. It's a perfectly good game on its own. But you know, if Naughty Dog's doing it, I'm sure they would make an amazing sequel to that game, right? Well, the point is that you know, like, I'm happy with Elden Ring as its own thing. And the way they implemented the old Dark Souls formula into, or Demon Souls formula into the open world setting, I think was done pretty great. Here's the finger reader who undermines great tree theories with one line of spoken dialogue. Not that it's not the theorist, apparently. Elden Ring is one of the only games I've returned to in my life. I guess that speaks to it, considering how many hours you've sunk into that. I don't usually replay games. It's been a talking point as old as 2011. I think some people who criticize From's narrative structure is kind of justified. It's not because people want a game like God of War, lol. Here's the thing with talking about the structure, is that you're talking now about something which is style, which people like or don't like, right? Now, if the question is, like, how they execute on the story, then yes, we can talk about that. But that's getting then deep into the writing, then, and how the mode of which it is telling something can happen. And again, I just don't think what we're bringing up here is, again, that really invalid, right? Compared to, say, again, going back to my example I said with, like, God of War or something. If you want a game that has, like, a story which is more digestible for you, those do, in fact, exist. Does that need to be something that Elden Ring has? Or could it possibly learn ways of which it presents its information? Sure, but my biggest critique about the writing in Elden Ring is, in fact, that it holds your hands, I think, too much for what it's trying to do. Like, I roll my eyes at having just Gideon Ofnir just fucking narrate to me all this exposition dumping, right? So if you told me what to improve, it'd be so I'd have less Gideons. I don't need something that is, for the most part, gets reiterated in item descriptions and stuff about what's going on with the different demigods and things. But if we're looking in terms of the actual, like, structure of the games themselves and how they handle it, with trying to keep things to the minimalism and then using item descriptions and stuff as a way to kind of give you that almost, like, you know, out-of-world narration on top, I think that's fine. I think the closest comparison I could make to it to other stuff, which you could argue may or execute it better, would be something like a Bastion or a Hades, which has a similar, like, sort of out-of-person narration where, you know, kind of acts as kind of acts as, like, sort of the out-of-world, like, you know, expositor. But in the case of Hades and Bastion and stuff, usually there's a bit more of a humor angle to it, right? It's more so to help also keep, like, brevity with the pace while also presenting the exposition there. I personally like one of the lore Bibles for DS1 and ER the team may or may not have in the future. I agree with ER. I think in the context of this being a collaborative effort with Martin, Miyazaki should at some point release Martin's actual notes on this. I know why he's so hesitant to do so, even though he really wants to show it to everybody because he thinks it's so good what Martin wrote up. But I think he should, in this case, compromise, simply for the fact that it's not just his game. It's also partially Martin's stuff, and a lot of people, I think, would appreciate seeing Martin's work and seeing how then it was implemented into that game, right? I think Gideon's great. Again, I'm not talking about Gideon as a character. I'm talking about Gideon as an expositor, right? Gideon's his personal arc, his story, the stuff like do so. Like, again, it makes sense for Gideon to be an expositor. I just don't think that aided or helped along the overall story for the game by having him be the one there to do it. I just think From's vague storytelling will work a lot more meaningfully in 90s CRPG format as the TLDR. Well, I'd have to disagree. I think all the people who buy my book might also disagree. I'm not a reviewer, so I don't have much to say. Well, you're a person with an opinion, Xavier. It's really all you need in terms of to kind of get your thoughts across. I remember Martin hated an ER movie. God, I thought that was going to be the first thing would be the sellout for it. Instead, it's Night Rain, so I guess we'll see how that works out. If some rival game was at the Draconic Tree Sound, would that make sense relative to Wyndham's location? Would friendly territories face each other? Could. Technically, this is facing, like, away and stuff like that, right? I guess the question would be, I guess the question would be, like, how would this have, like, played out in terms of, like, was there a road here? Because probably not a highway, but there'd be a dirt road and stuff here. It depends on what the purpose of having Wyndham over on this corner was. Was it because they wanted someplace on higher ground, closer to the volcano for some reason? Was there something about the lake or whatever? I guess that it would come down to, like, is there a specific reason this location was chosen? Or was it just something where they're like, you know, we're far enough away, we'll establish a settlement here? ER alone shows us enough of the lands between. The DLC shows a lot more. I don't know what they show. Based on what we see in Night Rain, it's going to be a lot more bosses, a lot more stuff about, like, maybe Nox stuff, maybe cosmology stuff. Like, there's plenty more that, again, there's definitely a lot more lore that Elden Ring could tell. I've just always been of the opinion that the way Elden Ring is structured, it's not conducive to having a sequel. Which is why I think they would probably go down more so the movie and TV show route, or maybe books or canon spin-off, like, novels or something. But, barring that, I guess they're gonna just do the non-canon or pseudo-canon, questionably canon spin-offs where they can insert a bunch of lore while having their own little fun scenarios. That might be the angle they go with. I wish Elden Ring was an open world and be more akin to Dark Souls 1. I would say this, if Elden Ring was an open world, it would lose a lot of the stuff that I like about it as its own game compared to Dark Souls 1 and stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of really good storytelling and stuff, which From is only able to do because it's an open world game. And like I said, some of it's the best stuff that they've ever done, period. Knowing From stuff, you know they'll troll the fans with newly added lore. I have a somewhat heretical opinion on that. Where's the turn-based RPG Dark Souls spin-off? Yeah! Where's my RTS Dark Souls? I want to make sure that I can play my Dark Souls yaoi visual novel. Give me all that Gwendolyn Firstborn action. I think their Armored Core series has a lot of great storytelling. I have never played Armored Core for its story, so I will just take anyone's word for it if they say the stories of the Armored Core games are great. Because all I would have to say is, I just get in the mech and I kill things. That's all I want. The only story that I remember vaguely being engaged with is, For Answer, and that's because I got to, commit mass genocide in the skies. Where's my Shadow Tower horror game? Anyway, we're gonna be ending the stream here, guys. I've been going on for a long time. I want to end things here, right? I'm just kind of here yapping with you guys. I don't got any purpose to just, like, loitering around here. I'm not finding anything I want, nothing really good there, so... Just gonna end things here so I can get back to work, you know? It's wonderful, you know, chatting with y'all and talking about lore and crap and stuff like that, but... I've got other things to do in life, unfortunately. Anyway, wonderful seeing y'all. Be safe, guys. Always happy to have you guys. Thanks for keeping me company as I, try to investigate further. Bye-bye.